with the heavenly gate shattered, and the usually still ancient endless sea seemed to have awakened its vitality as it roared and swept up. Billions of dust billowed up from the pitch-black seawater, almost reaching the sky. At this moment, the entire endless sea was boiling. The gate shattered, and the sealed passage opened. This was originally a formless and boundless sea, but it collided with the aura of the real outside world. Large areas of the endless sea evaporated, and cracks began to appear at the edge. All of this would definitely be destroyed. Black Cloud was so terrified that he could not speak. He felt an unprecedented aura, a real aura. The chaotic emperor's throne was easily torn apart. All their gazes were focused on one spot. In front of the broken heavenly gate, Jian Wushuang's broken immortal body was now intact. His bare chest was completely covered by the magnificent divine pattern, and his black hair had turned into a pure gold color, dancing wildly in the air. His two true eyes also turned into the purest golden color. It was so brilliant that it could not be looked at directly. It suppressed the heavenly Tao and defeated the ancient times. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was beyond the imagination of all the grand Yen immortals. Black Cloud could not even think of escaping. He stood on the spot with an ashen face. The young prince's initial madness turned into trembling. He smelled the most familiar aura. That aura belonged to the true emperor. Bian Ziyuan was completely stunned, and then there was only deep jealousy and madness left in his eyes. He was clearly an ant-like Yen immortal, but he killed all his enemies with his own strength. How could this be the doing of a Yen immortal? He could not look straight at Jian Wushuang's brilliance, and his aura could not even touch Jian Wushuang. He slowly raised his palm and looked at the extremely dense fate energy flowing in it, appearing very satisfied. This immortal body is not bad. It's worthy of being used by an emperor. The exit to completely leave the endless sea was right behind him, but all the grand Yen immortals did not dare to leave at all. They did not even dare to move. Black Cloud swallowed with difficulty. He glanced at Bian Ziyuan from the corner of his eye and suddenly had a plan. The next moment, he gritted his teeth and pushed Bian Ziyuan toward Jian Wushuang. At the same time, his body turned into billions of chaotic auras and swept across the wilderness. Everything happened so quickly that Bian Ziyuan was pushed in front of Jian Wushuang before he could react. Swish! A soft sound rang out, and his pupils suddenly widened to the maximum. The indescribable pain, the loss of fate energy, and the loss of immortal source made him subconsciously look at his chest. It was completely shattered there, and the immortal source of providence had dried up in an instant. And this was all because of a single finger. Jian Wushuang pointed at Bian Ziyuan from a distance and killed him. The supreme fate energy that was like seven-colored light passed through his back and enveloped the endless sea without slowing down. It contained the entire land, almost shrinking it. Black Cloud, who had already turned into chaotic aura and fled, immediately revealed his true form. He was in complete despair. He roared loudly, but in the end he could not change the outcome. Jian Wushuang stretched out his hand and with a wave, the supreme fate energy crushed Bian Ziyuan into powder. Then he grabbed Black Cloud and brought him in front of him. Emperor, please let me go, on account that cultivation is not easy." Black Cloud's face was ashen. He could tell that Jian Wushuang was not himself anymore. Jian Wushuang did not care about anything. In his eyes, there was only contempt and indifference, as if he was looking at an insect. "Are you going to release your own fate energy? Or do you want me to do it?" Black Cloud was in complete despair. He knew that if he died this time, he would truly die. "There's no need for you to act, great emperor. I'll resolve my own fate energy." After saying this, Black Cloud did not say another word. He died very quickly, leaving no trace behind. Jian Wushuang was very satisfied. He waved his hand, and a pair of scarlet golden eyes slowly swept over. He was a supreme existence, and no one dared to look directly at him. In the end, he looked at the young prince who was retreating and grabbed him with a wave of his hand. Looking at him, Jian Wushuang was confused. "I think I've seen you before?" The young prince's eyes twitched. I am." Before he could finish, he was interrupted. It doesn't matter who you are. What's important is your ending. After saying that, Jian Wushuang clenched his fist and killed him without hesitation. Everything was completed in an instant, and it could even be said that it was effortless. He turned his neck slightly and pulled Fu Yao in front of him, but he did not make a move. After a flash of doubt in his eyes, he felt relieved. You are one of his friends. I won't make a move so you can retreat. There was deep fear in Fu Yao's eyes, but she did not retreat. Instead, she said in a trembling voice, "Why, you are not him. Please return him." "Oh? How interesting. Do you think I'll let him come back?" The corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth moved slightly, and he revealed a strange smile. "From now on, the master of this immortal body is me, not him." After he finished speaking, he seemed to be lacking in interest. He immediately waved his hand and pushed Fu Yao away, turning around to look at the passageway behind him. Behind the shattered heavenly gate was a passageway that led to the real outside world. At this moment, even he was moved. It had been too long, so long that he had almost forgotten the past. It was unknown how many reincarnations the heavenly Tao had gone through, and what the outside world had become. Now he could finally go out. Just as he was about to step into the passage, two sword intents that covered the sky crushed toward him. Jian Wushuang's face turned cold, and he turned around. With just a sweep of his true eyes, the unparalleled sword intents instantly shattered and dissipated. Zhang Li and Yan Fan retreated at the same time. They spat out divine blood, and their auras became weak. Suppressing the killing intent in his eyes, he did not kill them in the end. He turned around and prepared to enter the passage. However, in the next moment, billions of seven-colored lights suddenly shot out from the depths of the passage, shining endlessly. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He raised his hand to block the attack and flew back instantly. "How have you been, Emperor Zhenwu?" Boundless and unhurried aura covered everything. This ancient voice seemed to contain the ultimate laws, causing the heavenly Tao to begin to appear. Hearing this voice, Jian Wushuang's expression changed, and he clenched his fists tightly. Along with the endless aura, a skinny old man in a black robe stepped into the endless sea. It was as if the rules of the great Tao flowed through his body, and there were lines of profound characters slowly circulating. His eyes were cloudy, and nothing could be reflected in his pupils. Looking at the figure, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. "Yu Chang, are you here to stop me?" "It is my duty." The skinny old man nodded slightly, looking rather amiable. Jian Wushuang, who was originally arrogant, had a look of fear in his golden eyes. He seemed to have recalled something and did not act rashly. The seven-colored radiance dissipated. Yu Chang, who had been following Emperor Zhenwuyang and was extremely mysterious, was not afraid even when facing Jian Wushuang, whose immortal body had been occupied by Emperor Zhenwu. After seeing his true appearance, Zhang Li and Yan Fan's eyes were round and a great fear flashed across them. They muttered, "Yu Chang." The collision of formless and intangible with reality would only bring about destruction. The endless sea was already on the verge of shattering, and even the void had fine cracks. Seeing this, Yu Chang waved his hand and sealed the passage to the outside world behind him with great luck. Only then did the endless sea return to its original state. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold, and his killing intent was unparalleled. "Aren't you afraid that I will keep you here?" "If I'm afraid, I naturally won't come," he said. His voice was calm and filled with an indescribable aura. "Do you really intend to fight me?" Yu Chang said, "If you insist on leaving this place, then this battle is unavoidable." Jian Wushuang stopped talking. The corners of his mouth curled up and he laughed loudly. Fine. Then I will continue the battle from 10 Hua years ago. There will be no winner or loser in that battle." Yu Chang said softly, "I won't let you die." When he heard this, a hint of anger flashed across his face. "You despise me?" Yu Chang said, "We dare not. But for Emperor Zhenwuyang, you must stay here. You're courting death." Jian Wushuang was really angry. "I will make you stay here today." After he finished speaking, the boundless Emperor's fate energy burst forth, and an unimaginable emperor's radiance enveloped the boundless void. Under the emperor's radiance, even a terrifying existence like Zhongli and Yen Fan felt that their movements were restricted. They could not even circulate their yen energy. With the undying and imperishable immortal body, Emperor Zhenwu was able to completely release his Emperor's fate energy. The Emperor's radiance was extremely mighty, and the yen power was extinguished. The endless sea was a place where the laws of the heavenly Tao collapsed. If it was in the outside world, the Emperor's fate energy he released would probably be able to instantly wipe out thousands of heavenly regions. Emperor Zhen Wuyang was a true emperor, unlike Black Cloud and Yu Yao, who had just comprehended the Emperor's fate energy. The arrival of the Emperor made everything dim and gloomy. Yu Chang's expression was calm, as if he was not facing an emperor, but an old friend. Yu Chang, I will take your life. Jian Wushuang was no longer around. His undying and imperishable immortal body had been seized by Emperor Zhenwu. He said angrily, his voice heavy. At this moment, his entire body was wrapped in the Emperor's fate energy. His emotionless true eyes shot out golden light. An extremely pure sword condensed from the Emperor's fate energy was held in his hand. The tip of the sword pointed at Yu Chang. Please go easy on me, Emperor Zhenwu. Yu Chang stood with his hands behind his back and smiled. Emperor Zhenwu snorted coldly and slashed forward with his Emperor sword. In an instant, even the eternal void could not withstand it and completely distorted and collapsed. It seemed like a simple slash, but it contained the fate energy of countless emperors. It was enough to exterminate an emperor to be. Facing this sword, Yu Chang stood where he was, still unperturbed. In the next moment he moved. The palm under the black robe swept in front of him. Immediately, a deep ripple like a mirror appeared. Then the Emperor's sword came with destructive power. The two collided, and a strange scene appeared. This sword did not pierce through the ripples. Instead, it directly sank into the rippling mirror and disappeared without a trace. Emperor Zhenwu did not think that this attack would work. At the same time, he controlled Jian Wushuang's immortal body and rushed forward. The Emperor's sword slashed down heavily. In an instant, a terrifying sword intent shook the entire place. The sword intent was split into 9 columns, each column carrying a heaven-covering force as it pressed toward Yu Chang. The Emperor's radiance was indeed mighty. At this moment, a layer of mysterious black patterns quietly surged around Yu Chang's body, filled with a desolate and ancient aura. Even grand Yen immortals would fall for that aura. Then he stood still and the mysterious black lines around him formed a barrier. Boom! 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 A loud sound rang out as Emperor Zhenwu retreated 1,000 feet. The barrier around Yu Chang also collapsed and he retreated 1,000 feet as well. The Emperor's splendor was overflowing with sparks. 1,000,000,000,000 miles around them had already turned into a battlefield. No grand Yen immortal could get close. Zhongli, Yen Fan, and Fu Yao had long been swept out of the battlefield by the dense Emperor radiance. Yu Chang, let me leave. You know you can't restrain me? Emperor Zhenwu said in a deep voice. The Emperor's sword was already in front of him. Emperor Zhenwu, you can't leave this place. Even if I stay here, you won't be able to leave. Yu Chang nodded and said with determination. When Emperor Zhenwu heard this, he was already furious. Is it really that easy for a lackey like Wuyang? Do you know how long you've been his lackey? You'll only do whatever he asks you to do, regardless of whether it's right or not. He continued, those are not my responsibilities. Then your duty is to create endless evil karma with Zhen Wuyang? Emperor Zhenwu sneered. What you've done is enough to destroy you 1,000 times over. Your deaths are not worth regretting. Yu Chang did not say a word. Finally, he said, there's no point in saying more. Continue sleeping. Why should I sleep? The one who should sleep is Zhen Wuyang. I have more right than him to sit in the heavenly court and control the entire Great Sea region. Emperor Zhenwu raged. The Emperor's radiance around his body had already been completely ignited. You should be the one sleeping here. His eyes burned and exploded with billions of Emperor's radiance, destroying everything. The void, which had become an eternal void, began to show fine dark golden cracks. At the same time, the endless sea began to return to the tide and rapidly evaporated. The Emperor's radiance was so dense that it was almost tangible. In the next moment, Emperor Zhenwu wielded his Emperor sword and slashed at Yuchang. The entire void was covered by the scarlet golden aura. The heavenly Tao laws belonging to Emperor Zhenwu were constructing it, providing it with endless great Tao energy. As for Yuchang, he was no longer as calm as before. Mysterious black runes surged into the sky, carrying a desolate and ancient aura. The two supreme fate energy clashed and then completely erupted. The sword strike could break through the realm. The pure golden intent clashed with the primordial black patterns. At that moment, even the great Tao was destroyed by such an impact. Words could no longer describe the terror of this battle. It was so grand that it even overshadowed the battle between Emperor Tibes. The laws of the great Tao were peeling off. The endless sea, which was originally a lawless land, was disappearing on a large scale at this moment. There was no safe space left in the void. No immortal prefectures, the demonic lands, or even the desolate secret realms could truly withstand a battle with an emperor. The Yen Immortal was an existence that suppressed the heavenly Tao. The Grand Yen Immortal was an existence that created the fate of the heavenly Tao. But what about the Imperial Emperor? No Yen Immortal or even Grand Yen Immortal knew what Imperial Emperors could do. They were so powerful that words could not describe them. The destruction of the sea and the shattering of the ancient heavenly Tao were all done with a single thought. They were so powerful that they were meaningless. They did not even know why they existed. When an emperor was enraged, everything would be destroyed. Even Zhongli, Yanfan, and the others who were a million billion miles away were affected. They felt a sweetness in their throats and coughed out a mouthful of divine blood. At this moment, the void was completely covered by the fate energy of the great Tao that had fused together. The pure gold blended with the primordial black runes, forming a dark golden color of destruction. The shattered emperor heavenly Tao slowly dissipated. The two of them looked at each other, and neither of them retreated at all. Jian Wushuang looked at Yuchang coldly. His immortal body was rapidly breaking and repairing at the same time. As for Yuchang, although his expression was still calm, his slightly red face also showed that he was not relaxed. The edges of the black robe on his body were somewhat torn. Although they were no longer clashing, the indescribable power of the heavenly Tao was still competing with each other. Emperor Zhenwu stared at him and raised his palms slightly. An even more indescribable aura transcended everything and covered the sky. He looked a little regretful. I originally wanted to leave this place and seal Zhenwuyang before letting you follow me. Alas, it's a pity, Yuchang. Yuchang smiled and did not comment. He continued, You'll stay here now. I'll get Zhenwuyang to follow you soon. After this sentence, there was no more communication. The real battle had begun. The Emperor's radiance was too bright, and no one could look straight at it. At this moment, the golden light of the Emperor's radiance swept up and covered the void and even the endless sea. Emperor Zhenwu raised his arms. The Emperor's sword in his hand contained the power of the Emperor's heavenly Tao and was extremely dazzling. On his naked back, 6 invisible traces of fate energy appeared. Along with the 6 streams of fate energy, 6 of the originally closed Emperor's true eyes appeared. Every true eye hung around Emperor Zhenwu. It was as if they had been silent for countless years and could wake up at any time. Seeing this scene, Yu Chang's expression began to turn solemn. He had never thought that Emperor Zhenwu, who had been exiled and sleeping in the endless sea, would grow to such an extent. 6 Sun True Emperor's eyes. Zhenwu Emperor smiled and opened his eyes. It was as if it encompassed everything in the universe, and in front of the true Emperor's eyes, everything was reduced to nothingness. Yuchang, will you retreat now? I won't, he said calmly, and endless primordial black patterns surged around his body again. Emperor Zhenwu did not say anything else. He raised his sword and pointed at Yuchang. Annihilate! In an instant, Yu Chang's figure was reflected in the Emperor's eyes. Then, billions of invisible forces surged out from the Emperor's eyes and wrapped around him. This formless power ignored the fate energy of any emperor, ignored the heavenly Tao of any emperor. Even if they were emperors, they would not be able to avoid it. Facing the invisible force that covered the sky, a long sword had appeared in Yu Chang's hand. The blade of the sword was dark green and was engraved with dense black patterns. With the appearance of this long sword, he raised his sword to meet the attack. However, a strange scene appeared. The invisible force that shot out from the emperor's true eyes actually ignored Yu Chang's attack and poured into his body. At this moment, only an invisible force was surging in the void. Emperor Zhenwu did not attack again. He stared ahead. Under the power of the great Tao released by the first emperor's true eye, Yu Chang's body was completely destroyed. He could not even resist at all. His body was completely torn into powder and then disappeared. As the first imperial emperor's true eye disappeared, the surging invisible force also disappeared. Yu Chang's body was crushed into dust, not even leaving a trace of his aura behind. However, the Zhenwu emperor was not in a hurry to move. He looked ahead calmly as if he already knew what was going to happen next. After a few dozen breaths, a gust of wind blew in the void covered by the emperor's fate energy. Then, a wisp of aura quietly started to condense. That had appeared at some unknown time quietly condensed. A desolate and ancient fate spread out, as if billions of stars had descended. A skinny figure in a black robe appeared. His expression was still and calm, as if nothing had happened. Emperor Zhenwu, stop fantasizing. With me here, you won't be able to leave this place. Even if I have already grown to the level of Zhenwuyang, I still can't leave? Humph. Emperor Zhenwu sneered. Now that I have the sixth sun true emperor's eyes, you think I can't get out of the endless sea? Try it, Yu Chang said. Then I'll give it a try, Emperor Zhenwu shouted loudly. Then, the second emperor's true eye opened quietly and released a brilliant golden light. The limitless golden light enveloped his body. At this moment, Emperor Zhenwu was even more unpredictable and purer than before. As a result, the undying and imperishable immortal body was unable to support such a great Tao of fate energy and began to rapidly shatter. However, at the same time it was rapidly repairing itself, and it was in a strange state of balance. Golden light shone brightly as Emperor Zhenwu moved. He activated the great void force and crashed forward. Yu Chang's expression was solemn as he held the long sword with the green engravings and pressed forward. Boom! 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 The explosion of power that could not be described with words instantly shattered the already fragile endless sea. The explosion that could easily destroy all heavenly Tao and heavenly regions swept across 1 trillion miles in an instant, or even more. Wherever the explosion passed, the endless sea quickly evaporated. Even this entire invisible and formless mysterious realm was collapsing. 1 trillion miles away, Zhongli looked at the broken pole and said with a trembling voice, Wushuang, is it two for Wushuang? Yan Fan's eyes dimmed. Such a terrifying battle was not something they could hope to achieve. Even if he wanted to save Jian Wushuang, he would not even be able to get close to them and would be crushed into powder. Just as he was about to comfort Zhongli, the extreme point shook again, and then a flow of fate energy swept over. Run! Yan Fan shouted, but it was too late. In the next moment, they were directly devoured by the great power of fate energy. Everything returned to chaos. The entire treacherous realm was about to turn into ruins. And they were still fighting. This battle was a continuation of the battle from Tenhua years ago. The final outcome would only end when one side fell into a deep sleep. Yu Chang, my guess is indeed correct. Emperor Zhenwu's voice resounded in the shattered pole, but it soon fell silent. In the void, for all eternity. Don't tell me all three of them are dead. If they don't wake up, I'll swallow them all. No, I can see that they might be benefactors' good friends. Don't act decisively, or it will be difficult to explain. Well, benefactor or not, if you don't treat me well, I'll eat them all. Yan Fan opened his eyes abruptly when he heard the noise. He saw a head the size of a star staring at him with vertical pupils. Startled, he reached out to the hilt of his sword. Don't waste your energy. You're able to survive because of my kindness. It won't be good if you act resolutely. the nine-headed beast said in a low voice. Yen Fan was also at the end of his rope and could not even draw his sword. Hearing that the giant beast had no ill intentions, he decided not to attack. He propped up the air with his hands and sat up. Then, Zhongli and Fu Yao woke up and looked at the changes around them in shock. As far as his eyes could see, the sky had completely shattered into nothingness. Even the endless sea beneath him had completely evaporated, turning into an endless abyss. Everything appeared barren. How did this place become like this? Fu Yao murmured softly. Isn't it good that it has become like this? They only need to use a little more strength and this cage will completely shatter. The giant beast said calmly, its eyes filled with hope. Now, let's just leave it to fate. The sea evaporated and became desolate. Everywhere was filled with broken Emperor's fate energy and even Emperor Heavenly Tao. At this moment, there were only two figures that seemed to have walked out of the ancient era, confronting each other. They were so brilliant that they could not be looked at directly. Each of them had indescribable fate energy flowing around them. One of them was Jian Wushuang and the other was Yu Chong. I was right. Yu Chong, you have always been an emperor, Emperor Jinwu said slowly. His words were filled with supreme authority. However, what makes me curious is that you're clearly an emperor. So why are you following Jin Wuyang? Yu Chong was silent. After a moment he said, That's not important, but it's all in the past. Emperor Jinwu said, You still don't want to let me leave? He said slowly, It's my duty. Please don't blame me, Emperor Jinwu. You know that you can't break my sixth son true emperor's eyes, Emperor Jinwu said. Yu Chong said, You can't overcome me either. Emperor Jinwu was a little angry. Then, are we going to continue fighting like this? Fight for a full 10 Hua years. If Emperor Jinwu is willing, I can accompany you, fighting for 10 Hua years. Then what if I drag you along with me? Emperor Jinwu's face was extremely gloomy. He was completely furious. Yu Chong nodded. In that case, I won't resist. Idiot so stubborn. I really want to know what method Jin Wuyang used to convince you to serve him like this. Emperor Jinwu sighed. Yu Chong spoke again. His voice was a little tired. Stop. You know that this will never end. Do you think I'll stop? Do you know how many years I've been sleeping here? What sin have I committed to be banished here? In terms of sin, he is the one who is guilty. He let me down. Emperor Zhanwu roared in anger. Yu Chong, don't you know anything about what he has done to me? He fell silent and finally said, I know, but this cannot be changed. The birth of some great Daos is actually original sin. So I was exiled here? Humph! Emperor Jinwu sneered. Even if I die now, I'll make sure that Jin Wuyang confronts me. As soon as he finished speaking, the sixth son true emperor's eyes merged into one, turning into a boundless river that flowed. Then he stabbed forward with the emperor's sword. This sword strike transcended everything. It was the sword of an emperor's ultimate fury. When the emperor was angry, all things would perish. Facing this sword strike, Yu Chong did not retreat or block. He just stood there and used his emperor body to withstand the attack. It was as if the water moon had gathered together and returned to one. Without any sound, the emperor's sword tore through his emperor body without any resistance and struck his heart. Billions of light shot out from Yu Chang's back, tearing his emperor body apart. Holding the hilt of his sword, Emperor Zhanwu said, Why didn't you resist? This sword had severely injured him and shattered his emperor body. Endless emperor's fate energy scattered in the eternal void, turning into great suns and stars, once again enshrouding some unknown heavenly Tao. Yu Chong coughed lightly. I can't dodge this sword strike even if I wanted to. I'll take this sword strike. Think of it as an apology on behalf of Emperor Wu Yang. I want Zhen Wuyang to admit his mistake personally. Emperor Zhanwu roared, and his terrifying emperor's fate energy fluctuated continuously. He is an emperor, and you know he won't admit his mistakes, Yu Chong said. Emperor Jinwu's fate energy trembled. He did not say anything else. He did not want to let such a skinny old man die. He was about to pull out the emperor's sword, but Yu Chang suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed it against his chest, preventing him from pulling it out. "Are you really courting death?" he said coldly. Yu Chang raised his head and looked apologetic. "Emperor Zhenwu, please don't blame me." Emperor Zhenwu was startled. Then he was shocked and wanted to retreat. However, it was too late. Yu Chang had used himself as bait, causing him to fall into the trap. At this moment, he realized that he could no longer retreat. His entire body was wrapped in a desolate and ancient aura. Strands of ancient black runes flowed silently, binding him tightly. This primordial black rune was also the fate energy of an emperor. "Let me go!" Emperor Zhenwu roared, but there was nothing he could do. Endless primordial black runes wrapped around him, directly destroying the emperor's fate energy on his body, rendering him unable to move. As more and more primordial black patterns appeared, Emperor Zhenwu gradually fell into a deep sleep. The magnificent emperor's radiance dissipated, and his true shadow fell into a deep sleep. Strands of divine blood flowed out of the immortal body, and the undying and imperishable immortal body fell into the void. Jian Wushuang seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Although his immortal body was constantly breaking and recovering, there was no sign of him waking up. Yu Chang's face was pale as he looked calmly at Jian Wushuang, who was floating in the void. Then, he stretched out his palm, and the endless primordial black patterns completely sank into his immortal body, stripping out the true shadow of the Emperor Zhenwu. Jian Wushuang suddenly sat up. Endless pain was revealed in his eyes. His immortal body was constantly shattered and reconstructed, making him extremely painful. As Emperor Zhenwu's true shadow was extracted, the pain was magnified countless times, almost causing him to die. The power of an emperor was simply too terrifying. Even if it was just a remnant leaving his body, it was not something that he could withstand. This caused his divine sense, which was originally perfect, to be about to shatter. The undying and imperishable immortal body could not withstand the continuous bitter battles, and it shattered even more. Without the support of Emperor Zhenwu's fate energy, he was already on the verge of destruction. He could no longer think clearly. His divine sense and immortal body had reached an unprecedented level of pain. Facing Jian Wushuang, who was burning with destruction, Yu Chang waved his hand and sent down a wisp of the purest primordial black mark to cover him. Jian Wushuang stopped roaring and fainted. After a moment of silence, an aura that seemed to be sighing disappeared. Yu Chang reached out to hold it and prepared to leave. At this moment, several weak flows of energy rushed over from afar. Yu Chang stopped and turned around. Jiang Li, Yan Fan, Fu Yao, the nine-headed beast, and the old shepherd all rushed over. Even though they had been exiled here for countless years and their hearts had long withered, they could not remain calm after seeing the passage to the outside world. However, none of them took that step because they knew that they had no way to resist Yu Chang, who was standing in front of the passageway. Looking at them, Yu Chang said softly, "You guys can't leave." At this moment, no one spoke. There was only bitterness in their eyes. Covering the disappointment in his eyes, Yan Fan took a step forward and said, "Please take care of his injuries." Yu Chang smiled. "I recognize you. You are the Sword Immortal from back then. It's all in the past. Let's not talk about it." Yan Fan smiled bitterly. "Please let that kid live well." Yu Chang nodded. Just as he was about to leave, another voice stopped him. "Please wait." The old shepherd's voice was slightly trembling as he carried Di Qing, who was still in deep sleep, to the front of him. "Can you let this person out?" Yu Chang did not say anything. He reached out and took Di Qing with his fate energy. Then, he turned around and left, disappearing into the passageway. As he left, the passage closed. The broken sky began to heal, and the dry, endless sea surged again. Everything that had happened before started to disappear without a trace. Everything returned to its original state. "Our fate energy has also been restored," Yan Fan muttered as he looked at the completely closed heavenly gate passageway. "Everything that's happened." Jiang Li was a little lost. "It's like nothing happened. Believe me, we will leave one day." It hurt, The undying and imperishable immortal body seemed to have entered some kind of cycle. It was constantly destroyed and reconstructed. The pain was indescribable. Every 360 breaths, his immortal body would shatter and reconstruct, and endless divine blood would flow. Even if his divine sense was perfect, he still could not endure it. When his immortal body had been shattered and reconstructed 36,000 times, Jian Wushuang finally fell asleep. The world was silent and the wind was blowing. He could faintly hear the children's laughter and the cool wind blowing past. It was an indescribable pleasure. However, this kind of satisfaction was still unable to overcome the pain brought by his dizziness. The pain in his mind forced Jian Wushuang to wake up and get out of the pain. His pupils barely focused, and what entered his eyes was a slightly low-lying grass. There were also several upside-down faces of children. Among the faces of the children, there was a child with braids on his head and a smirk on his face. He pinched an immortal herb and stuffed it into Jian Wushuang's nose. He could not stand the tickling and itching, and then he sneezed loudly. With this sneeze, his already weak immortal body almost fell apart. "Yay, you're finally awake!" The group of children laughed excitedly. His head was dizzy and his immortal body was in great pain. Jian Wushuang was about to struggle to get up, but he soon realized that something was wrong. He was hanging upside down under an immortal tree, dangling from one leg. "Hey, you naughty children! Quickly put me down!" Jian Wushuang shouted weakly. He wanted to break free with his own strength, but it was futile. He could only beg the children for mercy. It was still the same naughty boy who teased him. His lively eyes turned, and he smacked his lips and said, "You can come down if you want, but you have to have something to exchange for it, such as candy." "Candy? I have a lot of candies. Put me down first and I'll give them to you." Jian Wushuang continued to speak weakly. "You liar! You only have a pair of pants left. How can you have a place to hide candy?" Wan Tong said loudly with his hands on his hips. The other children also echoed. He was stunned and hurriedly looked down. As expected, there was only a pair of pants left. Apart from his pants, even the boyangdul at his waist had disappeared. Although he had a vague impression of what happened after Emperor Jinwu took over his immortal body, he was still in a state of shock. After all, the boyang bottle contained all the treasures and the three emperors' true souls. If they were lost, the losses would be immeasurable. "You guys, put me down quickly. Otherwise, I'll teach all of you a good lesson," Jian Wushuang shouted anxiously. He did not expect that these jade doll-like children were not afraid at all and made faces at him. He was helpless against this, but he could not even use a single bit of his yen power. This situation did not last for long. When a little girl with red lips and white teeth ran over, they all scattered like birds and beasts. "Humph! If you dare to tease the guests again, I will make sure that you will suffer." The little girl placed her hands on her hips, her cute little face filled with anger. After chasing away the group of naughty children, the little girl hurriedly ran to Jian Wushuang and cut off the immortal vine with a wave of his hand, allowing him to land on the ground. His body landed on the ground, and he groaned. He was in a daze. "Brother Jian, I knew it was you." A crisp and soft voice came from the child's mouth. Then, she jumped into Jian Wushuang's arms excitedly. This pounce almost knocked him out of breath. His eyes turned black, and then stars appeared. "Ah, Brother Jian, what's wrong?" I'm fine." Jian Wushuang forced his immortal body to move. He smiled and sat up with the boy in his arms. The little girl had her hair tied up in a bun. She had red lips and white teeth. She looked like a jade doll. She was none other than the first welcoming boy that Jian Wushuang met when he first arrived at the heavenly court, little Amy. "Amy, why are you here? It's very dangerous here." Jian Wushuang hugged her tightly and said warily, "What? It's not dangerous, Brother Jian. This is the heavenly court." Amy blinked and said in a lively manner. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Then all the memories from before surged into his mind. The endless sea that had shattered the void, the crazed Emperor Jinwu, and the calm Yuchang all appeared in his divine sense. "This is the heavenly court. This is the heavenly court." It was him who brought me out of the endless sea? Jian Wushuang's expression was solemn and complicated. He was worried about many things and did not know what to do. Big brother Jian, how are you? You look terrible. Amy was a little nervous. Her lively eyes were extremely clear. Looking into her eyes, Jian Wushuang's anxious heart gradually calmed down. It's fine, Amy. He shook his head and forced a smile. Is this really the heavenly court? That's right. Amy nodded with absolute certainty. This is Little World Mountain, which belongs to the heavenly court. It's where Grandpa lives. He nodded. Other than that person, no one else was qualified to be called grandfather by Amy. After weighing the pros and cons, Jian Wushuang said, Then can you take me to see Uncle Yu? Of course. Those who can come to Little World Mountain are all important guests. Amy said with a smile, then jumped down and pulled Jian Wushuang away. Amy, walk slowly. The extremely rich origin energy was flowing slowly. The immortal grass was growing and the clear spring was flowing. This place was a true paradise. Jian Wushuang, who was being pulled forward by Amy, was slowly recovering his immortal body. Big brother Jian, hurry up. I'll take you to see grandfather, Amy said excitedly. Jian Wushuang nodded. All his worries and doubts could only be resolved when he met Yu Chang or Zhen Wuyang. Under Amy's guidance, the entire Little World Mountain and its happenings were continuously captured in his mind. Here, there were no immortal foundation pavilions or grand halls. There were only long grass and clear springs. Just as Jian Wushuang was moving forward and seizing the time to repair his immortal body, a figure dressed in plain clothes stepped on the clouds and came over. The true sword in his hand surged with a powerful yen power. Stop! Wherever the sword pointed, the grass and leaves flew. This was a handsome young man with sharp eyebrows and sharp eyes, looking extremely cold. Seeing this young man, Amy stopped in her tracks, feeling a little nervous. Who are you? Why did you come to Little World Mountain? He shouted loudly, killing intent bursting out of his eyes. Jian Wushuang did not move. He blocked Amy behind him and said calmly, I want to see Uncle Yu. You should know the truth if you tell him. When the handsome young man heard this, his expression turned even colder. In other words, you barged into Little World Mountain without permission? He sighed. A bloody battle was probably inevitable. But right at this moment, a clear and melodious voice rang out. He is a guest here in Little World Mountain. I can be a witness. Jian Wushuang looked over and saw a figure riding the breeze and arriving at the center. It was a woman dressed in plain clothes. Her face was cold and delicate. The handsome young man frowned slightly when he saw this woman. Chong Ling, how do you prove it? The woman named Chong Ling took a step forward and said in a cold and sharp tone, Then I have to ask you first. When has a Yen immortal from the Great Sea region entered the small world mountain without permission? The handsome young man's expression stiffened and he said uneasily, I'm just guarding against the infiltration of external enemies. You know how important Little World Mountain is. Hearing this, the corners of Chong Ling's mouth curled up. Qing Shan, what if your words reach the ears of Uncle Yu, or even the elders? Chong Ling, what do you mean? The handsome young man took a step back and said nervously, If you don't want to cause any more trouble, move aside, she said in a low voice, then turned to look at Jian Wushuang and tilted her head slightly. Qing Shan was furious, but he did not dare to stop them. He could only glare at them and continue to move forward. Seeing Qing Shan leave, Amy, who was hiding behind him, hurriedly threw herself into Jian Wushuang's arms. Fortunately, Sister Ling helped us. Otherwise, we would have been in trouble. Amy patted her small body and said. Jian Wushuang nodded and looked at Chong Ling beside him. Thank you for your help. Chong Ling looked at him meaningfully. Ever since I can remember, there has never been a Yen immortal from outside stepping foot here. You are the first one ever. Clearly, your identity is not simple. He shook his head. You're thinking too much. Even I don't know how I got here. At this moment, Amy said, Big brother Jian, you're here to look for Uncle Yu. You're indeed not simple. Good luck, Chong Ling said. Uncle Yu is very mysterious. If you want to find him, You just need to move forward. Only need to move forward? Chongling nodded. This little world mountain is boundless. No Yen Immortal can explore this entire place. If you want to find Uncle Yu, you have to see if he wants to see you. Don't worry, big brother Jian. With Amy here, you will definitely find Uncle Yu. Amy patted her small body and promised. Chongling could not help but laugh. She reached out and rubbed her small bun. Amy, do you want to follow me? Amy shook her head, stretched out her chubby little arms, and tightly wrapped them around Jian Wushuang's neck. No, I have to take care of my grandfather. All right, I'm just teasing you. Chongling smiled and looked at Jian Wushuang. You are the only one who can make Amy so dependent on you, other than the Emperor's first prince. I'm surprised. Big brother Jian is a good friend of the young Emperor, which makes him my big brother. Amy blinked and said, I see. Then I wish you good luck and find Uncle Yu as soon as possible. Chongling smiled slightly and stopped on the spot. Jian Wushuang nodded and left quickly with Amy in his arms. In the distance, Amy's voice sounded again. Sister Ling, isn't big brother Jian very handsome? He had learned from Chongling that Little World Mountain was infinitely large, and reality had proven it to be so. Jian Wushuang, who was carrying Amy, was not very fast. However, he could cross a heavenly region every 10 breaths. Even so, the path ahead was still filled with immortal grass and clear springs. Amy, do you know how to find Uncle Yu or the young Emperor? Jian Wushuang asked. Amy, who was already lying on his back and was a little sleepy, shook her little head. I don't know. We can only see Grandpa if he wants to see us. Other than that, we can't find him. That's a little troublesome. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Although his injuries were slowly recovering, it was not enough to sustain his continuous consumption. Even though the yen power in this little world mountain was extremely dense, there was not much that could be absorbed. If he continued to search aimlessly, he would be exhausted before he could find Uncle Yu. After all, it had not been long since he was bullied by the group of naughty children. However, Jian Wushuang was not anxious. Instead, he gradually calmed down. The celestial soil under his feet was part of the small world mountain. It was the celestial realm where Zhen Wuyang lived. He did not believe that Uncle Yu or even Zhen Wuyang himself would not know that an unfamiliar Yen Immortal had entered Little World Mountain. It was very likely that they were observing in secret. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang remained calm and sent out his divine sense to investigate. The result was naturally nothing. Helpless, he could only move forward quickly again. The immortal grass grew and the wind blew. Jian Wushuang carried Amy on his back and moved forward quickly. However, other than various immortal traces, there was no trace of the aura of a Yen Immortal. This made him feel a little uncertain. Why did Uncle Yu bring him to Little World Mountain, and why didn't he appear? Just as he was deep in thought, his footsteps stopped. He felt some mud under his feet. If he was not paying close attention, he would have missed it. In the next moment, countless mysterious black patterns spread out from under his feet, carrying a desolate and ancient aura. Jian Wushuang felt desolate and lonely. Not bad. Your divine sense is very powerful. You found my aura in such a short time. As the elderly voice rang out, a skinny figure condensed from ancient black runes stood in front of him. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed. He knew that this was Yu Chong, Uncle Yu, the mysterious mighty figure who had single-handedly put Emperor Jin Wu to sleep. Yu Chang's expression was calm as he carefully sized him up. He seemed to be quite satisfied. On the other hand, he was a little anxious to know the whereabouts of Di Qing, Zhang Li, and Yen Fan. Seemingly having guessed his thoughts, Yu Chang said slowly, I will answer your question, but not now. He looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Now you answer my question. All right. Jian Wushuang nodded without hesitation. What are you best at? He was stunned. After pondering for a moment, he said, The sword. Sword, that sounds good. Yu Chang nodded and smiled kindly. Why don't we have a competition? The corner of Jian Wushuang's eyes twitched. Well, Uncle Yu, don't joke around. What a joke. The old man in front of him was a ruthless character who could fight with an emperor. His strength was unimaginable. An emperor-to-be was no longer an existence that could be spoken carelessly, let alone an emperor. Jian Wushuang believed that as long as Zhen Wuyang or Yu Chang had the slightest intention to kill him, he would not be able to survive for even a second. He would not even be able to resist. This was also why he was very resistant to displaying his strength. However, everything that happened next was not something he could control. A long sword that was completely dark green and engraved with countless dense patterns appeared in Yu Chang's hand. "Come on, let me see where your limits are," he said as he pointed his sword forward. Jian Wushuang's eyebrows twitched and there was only bitterness in his eyes. It was an emperor's sword. It had the power to destroy everything. Even though he had the strongest sword principle, he still did not think it was comparable. One was a Yen immortal, the other was an imperial emperor. Every step between them was an insurmountable chasm. This was no longer a fight. He was simply courting death. Obviously, Jian Wushuang did not want to die. However, this was no longer up to him. As far as the eye could see, it had already become Yu Chang's domain. Endless primordial black patterns were flowing, forming a grand Dao arena. And this battle of disparity had already begun. Yu Chang wielded the emperor's sword and slashed downward. In an instant, the sword swing that seemed like it was about to topple the mountains and seas turned into a million-feet sword slash that quickly slashed down. A chill ran down Jian Wushuang's spine. He had no choice but to resist the terror of life and death. This was a deadly sword strike, one that did not leave him any way out. Even an emperor-to-be would be killed by this sword strike. Jian Wushuang guessed that Yu Chang already knew the secret of the Boyang bottle, which was why he wanted to kill him. Knowing that he was about to die, he calmed down instead. Wushuang Sword Dao, Star River Lake Ocean Sword Intent. First move, second move. Star, River. The two moves were used at the same time. Even under Yu Chang's control, the sword intent was still unstoppable. The majestic heavenly river swept over. Jian Wushuang stood at the head of the tide and resolutely raised his sword to meet it. Facing that sword slash, the invisible sword was extremely dazzling. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded, and then everything returned to silence. The celestial river of sword shattered, turning into endless sword intent and dissipating. Jian Wushuang stood rooted to the ground. The invisible sword in his hand had also shattered into powder. Above his bare chest, a shocking sword slash almost cut him in half. Golden divine blood spurted out and scattered in the air. It was an indescribable pain, as if even his divine sill had been destroyed. However, this pain lasted for less than 10 breaths before it disappeared without a trace as the wound healed. Jian Wushuang did not even have time to express his opinion before his immortal body had already recovered. How could this be? He was shocked and pressed his chest in disbelief. Yu Chang, who saw this scene from afar, smiled and slashed again. This time there were 10 sword slashes. Jian Wushuang turned pale with fright. He could not even withstand one sword slash, and now there were 9 more. Destruction was inevitable. He tried to resist, but as expected, his sword Dao was easily shattered, and even his immortal body was almost torn into pieces. Jian Wushuang was confused as he covered his wound with his palm, because he found that the immortal body was recovering at an unimaginable speed. This was simply unbelievable. It should be known that even though the undying and imperishable immortal body was transformed from a super-perfect chaotic lifeform and was a heaven-defying existence, it did not have an exaggerated recovery speed. Not only did he not get destroyed by the Emperor's sword strike, but he even withstood it and recovered quickly. This was simply unimaginable. Jian Wushuang was only at the Yen immortal realm. With the strength of the undying and imperishable immortal body and the mystic garb of the 9 heavens, even if he could resist the attack of a 6 revolutions or even a 9 revolutions grand Yen immortal, he would not be able to withstand the power of an emperor. Could it be because of the mystic garb of the 9 heavens? Jian Wushuang thought nervously, completely unaware that Yu Chang had already put away his sword and arrived in front of him. "How's your body?" I feel pretty good." "Not bad indeed." He's able to endure attacks and withstand the power of an emperor. Yu Chang praised endlessly. This immortal body of yours is no longer the same as before. Jian Wushuang looked at him in confusion. At the same time, he did not know what had caused this change. Do you remember everything that happened in the Endless Sea? Jian Wushuang nodded. I remember, but I'm not sure. Could it be related to him? It does. At the last moment, I expelled his true shadow, but he still left something important in your body. Jian Wushuang's eyes twitched when he heard that. Yu Chang continued, have you noticed any strange changes in your immortal body? After pondering for a moment, he said, it's very strong. My recovery speed is almost incomparable to before. More importantly, I can withstand the power of an emperor now. If this had happened before, it would have been unimaginable. Even if the undying and imperishable immortal body was terrifying and heaven-defying, it was still impossible for it to withstand the power of an emperor. The undying and imperishable immortal body had an upper limit. Ordinary 6 revolutions or even 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals could severely injure his immortal body or even destroy it. After all, Jian Wushuang was only in the Yen Immortal realm, but now he had completely withstood Yu Chang's full-powered attack. That was a ruthless character who could fight against an emperor. Do you want to know what Emperor Zhenwu left in your body? Yu Chang said. Jian Wushuang nodded. The Emperor body. Emperor body? Emperor body. His eyes instantly widened, and he could not even speak properly. The Emperor body. Emperor Zhenwu had actually left his Emperor body to him. No wonder the undying and imperishable immortal body could withstand Yu Chang's attack. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's heart beat like a drum and throbbed uncontrollably. This improvement was too terrifying, completely beyond his imagination. One had to know that he was only at the peak of the Yen Immortal realm and his immortal body could block the Emperor's attacks. What if he stepped into the Grand Yen Immortal realm in the future? The immortal body grew with the growth of the realm. Jian Wushuang dared not imagine what it would be like if he became a Grand Yen Immortal one day. But soon, he woke up and was a little worried. Since Emperor Zhenwu's immortal body had really fallen into his custody, it was not strange that Yu Chang had brought him to the heavenly court. The true martial emperor's true shadow fell into a deep sleep in the Endless Sea again, so his emperor body should have been taken over by the heavenly court. Are you preparing to extract his emperor body out of me? Jian Wushuang looked up at him and asked. Yu Chang smiled faintly and did not comment. It's still too early. Since this is your first time coming to Little World Mountain, you should travel around first. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang had a rough idea that the emperor body would be extracted from him soon. Therefore, he decided not to dwell on it. No matter how powerful the emperor body was, it had already been detected by the heavenly court and the emperor. There was no way for him to keep it. Heaven and earth were silent. The endless black runes retreated and the world of the small world mountain was revealed again. Stepping on the immortal grass under their feet, the two of them moved forward. Little friend, why did you go to the Endless Sea? Yu Chang walked in front and asked. I went to save him. Jian Wushuang looked at him nervously. You want to ask if he is currently in the Endless Sea or has already left that place? Yes. Then you can rest assured. I've already brought him out. Just like you, he's in this little world mountain. Hearing this news, Jian Wushuang let out a long sigh. His trip to the Endless Sea had not been in vain. But then, his heart tightened as he thought of Zhongli and Yan Fan. Yu Chang also said, other than Di Qing, the rest of the Yen Immortals who are exiled in the Endless Sea are not allowed to leave. This is the Emperor's order. Jian Wushuang sighed and there was only sadness in his eyes. He felt that the Yen Immortals who were exiled in the Endless Sea were not unforgivable, and even had no fault, but they had suffered unimaginable pain. To the immortal with endless lifespan, being imprisoned in a cage was the coldest and cruelest punishment. Little friend, are you the heavenly official by the young emperor's side? Yes, yes, but not for long. Are you leaving? Or is it because of something else? Perhaps I'll be traveling after a while, so I won't be able to settle down. As for the position of heavenly official, I think there should be someone more suitable than me. Yuchang nodded and said nothing more. A step for 10,000 miles. Their speed was not slow, but the scenery in their eyes did not change at all. It was as if there was no real destination. After an unknown period of time, when the children who were guiding them appeared one after another, this little world mountain that was filled with immortal chi finally regained some life. Then, a Tao arena formed by pure yen power appeared. In every Tao arena filled with immortal energy, there were figures sitting or lying down. With just one glance, Jian Wushuang could not help but swallow. That was because the figures in each Tao arena were all carrying the yen power wheel and surging with an indescribable force. In other words, each of them was a 9 revolutions great yen immortal, a great expert who helped Jin Wuyang develop the Great Sea region. Moreover, there was more than one such ancient power. Looking around, there were hundreds of grand Tao arenas. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the emperor. Yu Chang smiled and walked forward. It was not until then that Jian Wushuang noticed that in the center of the square Tao arenas, there was an even more magnificent and peaceful Tao arena, like stars surrounding the moon. The endless moonlight was like a tassel silk that slowly spun around the edge of the Tao arena. It was impossible to point at it. Yu Chang led the way forward, the warm jade steps under his feet extending into the distance. Suppressing the palpitations in his heart, Jian Wushuang braced himself and quickly followed. As he moved forward, the silent Tao arena around him began to exude a sense of awakening. Then, figures flew out one after another. They did not even need to be deliberate. That kind of aura that was like the mountains and seas collapsing and crushing the heavenly Tao was completely emitted. Each elder cast a curious look at Jian Wushuang and then walked forward together. Jian Wushuang glanced at the prestigious elders beside him from the corner of his eye and became extremely nervous. There was no other reason than that the fate energy released by those ancient elders was too powerful and terrifying. Jian Wushuang, who was already weak, had to do his best to resist the pressure around him. He was miserable, but he could only barely deal with it. Yu Chang walked at the forefront. With a wave of his palm, the moonlight enchantment was activated, revealing the true appearance of the Tao arena. Colorful lotuses sprouted from beneath his feet and extended into the Tao arena. This was a magnificent lotus path. All the giants in the sky had smiles on their faces as they walked into the Tao arena. Little friend, please follow me. Yu Chang turned around with a smile and extended his hand to receive him. Jian Wushuang returned the greeting and took a deep breath. He stepped on the magnificent lotus pathway and entered the magnificent Tao arena. Billions of colorful lotuses grew, and the top-notch fate energy of the great Tao flowed slowly in the Tao arena. With that kind of fate energy, it was enough to give birth to the most powerful warriors. Jian Wushuang stood in the Tao arena and looked around. He was surrounded by mighty figures. It was as if the sky was filled with giants. At this moment, the ancient bell rang gently, and the sky became one. Every elder was a supreme being who had walked out from the ancient era. Even in Jin Wuyang's Emperor Tao Palace, they each had their own small world. The stars surrounded the moon, and the moon and stars intertwined. In the center of this grand training hall sat a middle-aged man in white. He closed his eyes and his clothes floated around him. Billions of fate energy were connected and he could not look straight at them. Jian Wushuang, who had been to the heavenly court several times, knew very well that the figure was the emperor of the entire Grand Sea region, Jin Wuyang. As the sky full of giants sat down in their respective small worlds, Jian Wushuang also sat down in his small world under Yu Chang's invitation. Yu Chang's position was the seat closest to Emperor Jin Wuyang, and they sat almost side by side. The other ancient grand elders were like stars around them. Jian Wushuang felt like he was sitting on pins and needles as he looked at Emperor Jin Wuyang, who was sitting almost side by side. This was the first time he had been so close to the Jin Wuyang. He felt uncomfortable, especially when he was faced with the gazes of so many ancient elders. However, Jian Wushuang was once a universe master, so his divine sense was firm. He quickly returned to normal and began to look down. At the same time, Jin Wuyang, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. He did not look at the elders but at Jian Wushuang. Their eyes met, and an indescribable fate energy seemed to cross the ages and hit them. It was a gaze that was filled with absolute suppression. This was an involuntary pressure that came from his divine sense. Jian Wushuang's eyes were calm, but his hands were clenched under his robe. Even though his divine sense had already fused and stabilized, he still felt dizzy. However, this pressure only existed for a few breaths of time before it was slowly withdrawn along with Jin Wuyang's ambiguous gaze. Then, he spoke, his voice gentle and steady. "I've seen you before, the little Yen Immortal who stirred up the storm in front of the 6 heavens." Jian Wushuang was speechless and did not know how to answer. Jin Wuyang continued, "It's just that you're not with Yenner. Why did you run to the endless sea?" He knew that he was asking the obvious, but he could only bite the bullet and say, "To save a Yen Immortal." Jin Wuyang laughed when he heard that. "You're quite honest." Jian Wushuang wanted to find an excuse to get away with it, but it was already set in stone. One had to know that the last battle in the Endless Sea had even alarmed Yu Chong. Since Yu Chong was alarmed, it was naturally impossible for Jin Wuyang not to notice. Therefore, he was asking the obvious. "Yenner opened the door for you?" "Yes." "How bold. Not only did the two of you dare to think, you even dared to do it. A puny little Yen Immortal dared to barge into the banished lands. Aren't you scared of dying?" "I'm scared, but I can't help it." Jin Wuyang looked at him and did not say anything else. After a moment, he said, "It's already unimaginable that you can walk out of the endless sea alive. But since everything has already happened and ended, I won't hold you responsible anymore. Continue to be a great heavenly official by Yenner's side and protect him well." Jian Wushuang remained silent and finally said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I'm afraid I can't do it. The reason why I temporarily took up the position of heavenly official beside him was actually because of an agreement between us. Once 70 years pass, I will leave." As soon as he finished speaking, the Emperor Dao Arena fell silent. All the elders looked at him with surprise in their eyes. Because for a Yen Immortal to be able to become a heavenly official of the Imperial Emperor lineage, the path of cultivation in the future would basically be 1,000 times smoother. The position of a heavenly official was not as simple as a position. It represented that one could enjoy the fate energy of the Emperor's lineage. That kind of fate energy was enough for a Yen Immortal to easily step into the Grand Yen Immortal realm, and as time passed, it would not be difficult for him to break through to 6 revolutions. To a Yen Immortal who had an almost endless lifespan, needless to say, this was a miraculous position to be in. Even for the elders, it was a rather generous condition. One had to know that Emperor Fate energy was too important, so important that even 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals coveted it. But now he was rejected by a Yen Immortal. At this moment, Yu Chong said, "Little friend, do you know how many years have passed in the outside world after you entered the Endless Sea?" Jian Wushuang was stunned and shook his head. "I don't know. 10,000 years." "What? 10,000 years?" He was in a trance for a moment, and even his divine sense fluctuated. It had been 10,000 years since he came to the great Yen domain from the divine power universe. He did not even have the time to do anything, and yet 10,000 years have passed. Yu Chong nodded. "It has indeed been 10,000 years since you entered the Endless Sea." Suppressing his absent-minded expression, Jian Wushuang nodded. "Thank you for telling me." Jin Wuyang said, "Where do you think you're going after that agreement?" He shook his head. "I don't know. I think I'll travel around." "Ha ha!" Jin Wuyang laughed out loud. "Then do you think I'll let you leave?" "You won't," Jian Wushuang said straightforwardly. "You're right. I won't let a puny little Yen Immortal who can shake a Grand Yen Immortal leave the Grand Sea region. Furthermore, this Yen Immortal is the only one who managed to escape unscathed from the Endless Sea." Jian Wushuang remained silent. Jin Wuyang did not want him to leave. He could only accept it. Jin Wuyang looked at him and said, "But there are exceptions to everything. If you want to leave, there is still a way." "What is it?" "Defeat the heavenly official I chose for Yenner, and you can leave on your own." "All right, I agree." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and said firmly, He could already imagine that Jin Wuyang would randomly appoint an elder beside him to be the young emperor's heavenly official. If that happened, he would have no chance of winning. However, what happened next was unexpected. Jin Wuyang did not randomly appoint a senior statesman. Instead, he looked at Yu Chong. Yu Chong nodded, then stood up and waved his sleeve, opening the gate of the Dao arena. Immediately after, dozens of children entered in a line. Surrounded by them, a young man with a sword on his back and extremely sharp eyes stepped into the dojo. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed in surprise. This was because the person who had come was none other than the young man who had made things difficult for him when he first came to Little World Mountain. Chong Ling called him Qing Shan. It was too much of a coincidence. Jian Wushuang knew that Qing Shan was the heavenly official that Jin Wuyang had chosen for the young emperor. Just as he had expected, Jin Wuyang later declared that Qing Shan was the candidate for the position of heavenly official. Their eyes met. At this moment, Qing Shan, who was standing in the center of the training hall, was extremely shocked. He had never thought that they would meet again in the Emperor's Dao arena. What was even more terrifying was that there was actually such a connection between the two of them. Qing Shan had never thought that they would have a fight. I heard that you are strong enough to defeat a Grand Yen Immortal. Now, if you can defeat Qing Shan, I can let you go, and I won't force you to stay by Yenner's side. Jian Wushuang nodded. Sure, go ahead, Jin Wuyang said in the end. Boundless fate energy transformed into a breeze that carried him to the center of the Dao arena. Qing Shan still had not come back to his senses and looked at Jian Wushuang in disbelief. The two of them faced each other from afar, but Jian Wushuang did not take a step back. In front of him, Qing Shan was a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal. Because he had cultivated in Little World Mountain, the aura of Yen power on his body was extremely vast. As long as there was a chance to break through, he would easily reach 6 revolutions. They did not know where the breeze came from, and it blew their clothes. An invisible sword had already quietly formed. You want to attack me? Qing Shan felt that it was somewhat absurd. A puny little Yen Immortal actually had the desire to fight him. I have no choice, Jian Wushuang said as the invisible sword in his hand shone brightly. In that case, let's begin, Qing Shan said coldly, his true sword already in his hand. A violent wind blew, ready to erupt at any moment. Sister Ling, big brother Jian is going to fight with him. What should we do? In front of the heaven gate, Amy anxiously shook Chong Ling's finger. Chong Ling's expression was grave. Apparently, Jian Wushuang's actions were no different from suicide in her eyes. A 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal and a Yen Immortal, the difference between them could not be described with words. They did not even need to fight, and the outcome was already decided. Even though Chong Ling was secretly anxious, she had no choice at all because they were not even allowed to enter the Dao arena. They could only stand outside the gate and watch everything that was happening inside the Dao arena training hall. Then, she squatted down, looked at Amy and said, Your big brother Jian will be fine. Big brother Jian is really powerful, right? Amy quickly said, He is very powerful as the young emperor. That's right, your big brother Jian will definitely win, Chong Ling said with a smile. Then, will big brother Jian definitely win? Definitely. We'll just watch from here. Yu Chong, what do you think will be the outcome? Jin Wuyang turned to Yu Chong and said with a smile. He did not say anything. His turbid eyes looked down and only spoke after a long while. Qing Shan is not as good as Jian Wushuang. When Jin Wuyang heard this, he did not comment. He just watched this extremely unfair battle with interest. Then, a scene that surprised all the elders appeared. None of them had expected that Jian Wushuang would make the first move. With an indomitable momentum, he crushed toward Qing Shan. The vast sword intent swept up, stirring up a huge wave of dust in the dojo and instantly surrounding the front. Qing Shan's eyes narrowed, and his cultivation state and yen power erupted. The terrifying yen power force of the 3 revolutions realm was almost completely overwhelming once it was released. The magnificent yen power turned into a flash of light and cut through the dust wave formed by the sword intent. Then, it pierced toward Jian Wushuang without any reduction in its momentum. Clang! A loud sound rang out and Jian Wushuang was sent flying back thousands of feet. Sparks flew everywhere. He only stopped when he was 10,000 feet away. Even though he had been hit hard, he was not injured at all. He had the mystic garb of the 9 heavens and the protection of the emperor body. Not to mention Qingshan alone, even if there were 10,000 other warriors like Qingshan, it would be impossible for them to break through the defense. This was what made Jian Wushuang, who was still in a weak state, have the confidence to fight. Qingshan was calm. In this first confrontation, he seemed to have the upper hand, but he did not feel relaxed. He could feel that Jian Wushuang was not simple, so he began to be careful. However, Jian Wushuang was different. His immortal body's defense could not be broken for the time being, so he rushed forward without any hesitation. Wushuang Sword Dao, Star River Lake Sea Sword Intent. Second move. River. The majestic celestial river swept down and swept up a huge wave of dust again, covering forward. Qingshan did not dare to underestimate Jian Wushuang. Although he was a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, Jian Wushuang gave him an inexplicable sense of pressure. Especially under this sword intent, he actually had a feeling of shock. Retracting his thoughts, he held his sword in front of him. The terrifying might of a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal was displayed without a doubt. The dark green yen power also swept up, like pillars of the mountains and seas, smashing toward the Sword Dao River. The two collided, and the power of the battle was at stake. At this moment, even the Emperor's Dao arena trembled. All the elders looked at this scene in shock. They could not believe that such power was actually released by a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal and a Yen Immortal. The dark green yen power kept retreating, but the Sword Dao Heavenly River was also rapidly shattering. Gritting his teeth, Qingshan, who was walking forward, was shocked beyond words. He was actually evenly matched with a Yen Immortal. This was something he could not tolerate at all. He was furious, and a heaven-shaking image form condensed at this moment. Then the natal image form opened its eyes, and with the power of the mountains and seas, it waved its palm and smashed toward the Sword Dao Heavenly River. Rumble! The majestic celestial river shattered instantly, turning into countless tassels that scattered and disappeared. However, at the same time, a cold light appeared in Qingshan's eyes. He turned pale with fright. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would actually hide in the Sword River and attack him. This was a supreme sword strike, an unstoppable sword strike, a sword strike that put his own life at risk. Qingshan knew how terrifying this sword strike was, so he released his natal image form to block it at all costs. However, it was already too late. A cold light appeared and pierced into the natal image form. Time seemed to stop and Jian Wushuang's strike hit the target. In the next moment, with his heart as the center, billions of blue cracks instantly covered his natal image form. His aura dissipated and his yen power collapsed. With the destruction of the natal image form, Qingshan, who was wearing a white robe, was shocked. He retreated heavily, and the white robe on his chest was soaked in divine blood. The Dao arena was silent. All the elders raised their heads and looked at Qingshan. They were all in disbelief. A 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal was actually forced into a corner by a Yen Immortal. How was this possible? A cross-realm battle was something that had never happened before, but it was happening now. Even rare geniuses in the world probably could not do it. This shocked all the elders, including Zhen Wuyang. He frowned slightly. The emperor had never looked so serious before. He had been in control of countless heavenly regions and had seen too many geniuses. He was completely moved. Qingshan is not as good as Jian Wushuang. Indeed, this is the case, he muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang stood with his sword in his hand. His face turned red because he used too much strength. He was still in a weak state, and he had no time to recover at all. In fact, the battle had worsened the serious consequences. However, he still forced the yen power in his body to circulate normally. Qingshan was a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, so he would not be defeated easily. Even if he was injured by the extinctive sword for the first time, he could still avoid it. After all, the difference between a 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal and a Yen Immortal was too great. His sword strike severely injured Xianxia, but it was not fatal, and it did not hurt his life source. The real battle was about to begin. Xianxia slowly raised his head. His gaze was as sharp as swords and filled with cold killing intent. In the next moment, he took a step forward and dashed toward Jian Wushuang like an arrow. Jian Wushuang squinted. He did not dodge, but instead he charged at Xianxia. Boom! The two of them collided directly, shaking the world. The resulting explosion swept up, and endless power exploded, wreaking havoc in the entire Dao arena. Yu Chong reached out his hand in time and used his supreme fate energy to envelop the explosion within the barrier. At this moment, all the elders sat up straight with shock in their eyes. Outside the gate, Chongling found it hard to believe. She knew Xianxia's cultivation base very well, and it was because she knew it too well that she was shocked. She knew how weak Jian Wushuang was. It was because of his weakness that she had helped him. However, the scene before her completely overturned her imagination. Jian Wushuang, who looked weak, had actually exploded with such power. At the same time when the explosion reached its peak, Chongling covered Amy's eyes with her hand in time. She did not want Amy to see Jian Wushuang defeated. In Chongling's heart, she was certain that Jian Wushuang was going to lose. 3 revolutions Grand Yen Immortals were worlds apart from Yen Immortals. They could not be changed just by risking their lives. The dust dissipated. When the two figures stood opposite each other, Chongling's eyes widened to the max. Jian Wushuang's robe was torn to shreds, but he was unharmed. Xianxia's entire left shoulder was completely shattered. Divine blood spurted out and was repairing it with great difficulty. The result was a complete reversal. All the ancient elders, including Zhen Wuyang, were completely shocked. How could this be the power of a Yen immortal? Xianxia clutched his broken right arm and retreated. He looked at Jian Wushuang in disbelief and surprise. If the first confrontation did not mean anything, then the second confrontation had already explained everything. Xianxia was no match. Jian Wushuang was also in a bad state. The blood in his immortal body was in turmoil and his yen power was almost exhausted. If he did not have the support of the emperor body, he would not have risked exhausting his yen power to fight against Xianxia like this. As his right arm reformed with difficulty, Xianxia slowly said, "Are you really just a yen immortal?" Jian Wushuang did not answer him. He said, "Just admit defeat. I just want to leave this place. I don't want to be your enemy." He was stunned, and then the corners of his eyes trembled. "Are you insulting me?" "No, I just want to end this meaningless fight." Before Jian Wushuang could finish his sentence, Xianxia was already furious. He waved his arms and the endless power instantly turned into millions of green sword curtains and swept up. The green sword screens surrounded Jian Wushuang almost instantly. At this moment, all the ancient elders were looking forward to see this move. Xianxia roared, pushing the endless green sword curtains, slashing downward. Then, Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the sword curtains, made a shocking move. He completely gave up on defending himself, and rushed toward Xianxia with his bare chest against the sword screens that were pouring down. This scene shocked all the elders. Zhen Wuyang frowned slightly, as if he had noticed something. After a moment, he came to a realization. Immediately, he was a little annoyed. "Yu Chong, why didn't you remind me?" Yu Chong smiled. "Lord Emperor, it's not that I didn't remind you, but that you didn't give me the chance to do so. I miscalculated. How could I have forgotten about the abnormality in this kid's immortal body?" Zhen Wuyang smiled bitterly. "This time, it seems like there's no suspense." Yu Chong then asked, "If our little friend Wushuang wins, will you let him leave, Lord Emperor?" "Of course I will let him leave. No matter how talented he is, if he is not on the same side as Yenner, I will not force him to stay." Unfortunately, Yenna... Zhen Wuyang did not continue. After letting out a long sigh, he looked back at the battle in the Dao arena. Xianxia had already forgotten everything. There was only shock in his eyes. The figure flew toward him, growing bigger and bigger in his pupils, and finally occupying his entire vision. The endless green sword screens did not even damage Jian Wushuang's mystic garb of the 9 heavens. let alone his emperor body. A scarlet light burst out, stabbing toward the Xianxia's immortal source without any pause. Jian Wushuang's eyes were red. He had used the power of the slaughter Dao, and he was currently consumed by bloodthirst. If this attack hit the target, it would be impossible for Xianxian to survive. But in the next moment, the scarlet light did not pierce through Xianxia's immortal source, but brushed past Xianxia's chest. At the same time, Jian Wushuang exerted strength with his shoulder and pressed heavily against his chest, sending him flying. Rumble! It was as if the mountains and seas were about to collapse, and the divine mountain was about to collapse. He heavily slammed into the barrier and then fell back onto the training hall. The Dao arena was silent, and all the elders had solemn expressions. Chongling, who was standing outside the gate, was completely stunned. She looked at Jian Wushuang in a daze. Amy pushed her palm away and saw this scene. She immediately shouted excitedly, "Big Brother Jian! Big Brother Jian won! Big Brother Jian won!" Lying on his back in the hall, Xianxian was bleeding from his mouth. He forced himself to swallow a mouthful of divine blood. He struggled to get up and looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated expression. His immortal body was completely unharmed and had not suffered any serious injuries. The only mouthful of blood he spat out was from the collision. Jian Wushuang had temporarily withdrawn his power. He was suffering the backlash. If it was not for his strong immortal body, it was possible that he would have fainted on the spot. He swallowed the blood in his throat and slowly turned around to look at Zhen Wuyang. At this moment, all the elders held their breaths and looked at Zhen Wuyang. Everything that happened counts. Zhen Wuyang nodded slightly and said in a cryptic manner. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief and then cupped his hands in thanks. But right after, Zhen Wuyang spoke again, his voice filled with supreme authority. "Since you're not willing to be Yenner's heavenly official, I won't force you. However, I'm asking you now, are you willing to be my heavenly official?" Jian Wushuang's eyes widened. The elders of the heavens also twitched their eyes and widened their eyes. Emperor Zhen Wuyang, the supreme existence of the entire Grand Sea region, was actually extending this position to a mere Yen immortal, inviting a puny little Yen immortal to be the great heavenly official of the emperor. This was simply too absurd, so much so that Yu Chang turned to look at Zhen Wuyang. "Are you willing?" Each word was loud and reverberated in the Dao arena. All the elders, including Chongling who was standing outside the gate, became nervous. This seemed to be the most absurd decision the emperor had ever made. "Io, Sister Ling, you're hurting me," Amy pouted and said, pulling her small hand out of Chongling's tightly clenched palm. Chongling recovered from her shock and hurriedly apologized. Then, she once again focused her attention on everything that was happening in the training hall. Jian Wushuang stood alone in the vast Dao arena. Clouds and mist rose and fell around him, making him look like a proud and aloof immortal. "Lord Emperor, I am not willing." The Dao arena was silent. All the elders were stunned. They could no longer imagine the reason for their rejection. Yu Chang looked at Jian Wushuang and his murky eyes sparkled with clarity. Zhen Wuyang laughed. "Interesting. Tell me the reason." After a moment of silence, Jian Wushuang said, "I can't settle down here. I'm just a passerby." "Is that all?" "That's all." Zhen Wuyang did not say anything else. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard in the Dao arena. Those who are not restrained are often the most terrifying. The mist was like a wisp of black and gray silk. It blew against Jian Wushuang's face along with a strong wind that came from nowhere. Everything he saw was barren. This kind of desolation was absolute. There was no aura of any living being. It was a land of death. Jian Wushuang wanted to escape, but he had no way to do so. This was because there were nearly 50 ancient elders behind him, while in front of him were Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang. They were the supreme existences of the Great Sea region, and they had transcended the ages. Jian Wushuang was completely surrounded by such a group of existences. He did not even have the intention to resist. However, he was not too worried. If Zhen Wuyang did not want him to stay, he would not have gone through so much trouble to bring him here. From the limited information he got from Yuchang, this place had almost never been set foot by a Yen immortal since it was born. It was a realm that only belonged to the emperor. It was his emperor's realm. Zhen Wuyang called this place Desolation. Desolation, a deathly silence. The only one in history. Jian Wushuang had already guessed that Zhen Wuyang had brought him here to strip him of his emperor body. He sighed in his heart and had no choice but to accept reality. As Zhen Wuyang's emperor's realm, Desolation was too oppressive. Even the Yen power was slowly disappearing here, unable to exist. Nothing could exist. Only nothingness was eternal. This place was too suitable for stripping the emperor body. As he continued to move forward, Jian Wushuang, who had almost exhausted all of his power in his body, started to become restless. He felt that something was wrong. He felt that some kind of power was awakening in his body. At the same time, Yuchang and Zhen Wuyang also sensed it. At this moment, all the elders looked solemn. Then, a series of Yen powers came out of their palms and turned into chains, binding Jian Wushuang. That kind of pressure almost instantly squeezed him until he could not speak. "No, there's no need to do this. I'm going to suffocate to death." Jian Wushuang spoke with difficulty. However, in the next moment, an unimaginable power erupted from the depths of his immortal body. The power was so great that it tore apart the chains around him in an instant. Boom! 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 Boundless energy burst forth, and nearly 50 elders were blasted away. Almost at the same time, Yuchang reacted. Thousands of wisps of dark green power shot out from his fingertips and bound Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly and waved his arm to extinguish Yuchang's attack. "You think you can trap me? You overestimate yourself." After he finished speaking, he prepared to escape. "You want to leave? Zhen Wu, take a look at who I am." With supreme prestige, Zhen Wuyang shouted coldly. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned serious. "Zhen Wuyang, you still don't plan to let me go?" Zhen Wuyang said in a deep voice. "Why should I let you go? Your destination is the Endless Sea. I'll give you two choices. The first is to return to the Endless Sea voluntarily. The second is to be imprisoned here forever." The deep voice shook the entire emperor's realm. Jian Wushuang laughed evilly. "I choose the third option. I have a share of this land. Why should you be the true emperor and I be banished by you? My appearance means that our identities will be exchanged." "Humph!" Zhen Wuyang snorted coldly. "Do you think you have a chance to leave? Why don't we give it a try?" Jian Wushuang laughed arrogantly, and his immortal body emitted endless emperor's fate energy. His naked chest turned golden at this moment, and emperor patterns covered it. "Who dares to stop me?" Nearly 50 ancient elders were struggling to get close at this moment. In fact, they could not even get close. Only Zhen Wuyang and Yuchang could fight. At that moment, the golden emperor's radiance spread out, and the entire emperor's realm shook. The emperor's radiance was extremely bright, and no one could look straight at it. Jian Wushuang raised his hands and endless emperor's radiance began to radiate. It was even more vast and terrifying than when he was in the Endless Sea. Moreover, the Fate Six Paths Emperor's fate energy began to appear behind him. Accompanied by the dense fate energy of the Sixth Path, 6 closed true eyes appeared. Seeing this change, Zhen Wuyang's expression turned solemn. 6 Sun True Emperor's eyes? Yuchang nodded. "That's right. I've already experienced it in the Endless Sea. How is it compared to me?" Zhen Wuyang looked at him. Yuchang said, "They are equally matched. If his emperor body has also escaped the restraints of the Endless Sea, it will become even more challenging." "I see. No wonder he's so arrogant," Zhen Wuyang said in a deep voice. At that moment, Jian Wushuang lowered his eyebrows and said coldly, "Zhen Wuyang, let me go. I will leave the Grand Sea region and will not disturb you again. If you insist on sealing me here, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences. I'm afraid you'll have to stay here forever." Zhen Wuyang sneered. "If I can trap you once, I can trap you again. Then let's give it a try." Jian Wushuang shouted, and an emperor sword condensed from emperor's radiance appeared in his palm. With the appearance of the emperor sword, His aura changed as if he was ready to fight to the death. Jin Wuyang and Yu Chang were solemn as well. Their emperor's fate energy was quietly released. As supreme existences, the foundation of their strength could no longer bear the weight of their fate energy. In the end, the only thing that mattered was the emperor's fate energy. Apart from Jin Wuyang, Yu Chang also revealed his emperor's fate energy. A realm could not tolerate two masters, but it was hard to imagine that Jin Wuyang had another emperor by his side. Most importantly, even when Yu Chang was an emperor, he was still a devoted follower of Jin Wuyang. This was the most unbelievable thing. The three emperors had gathered for a battle. With them as the center, not even the ancient elders could set foot within billions of miles. Jin Wu, do you really dare to fight us? Jin Wuyang continued to exert pressure. Why wouldn't I dare? Jian Wushuang was proud. His 6 true eyes were floating around him as if they would open at any time. Jin Wuyang did not speak anymore. 6 true eyes appeared around him in an instant. A true battle between monarchs. Destroy! Destroy! Jian Wushuang and Jin Wuyang spoke at the same time. The 2 imperial emperors' true eyes opened at the same time, and an unimaginable aura of nothingness descended. This formless aura could ignore any emperor's fate energy or heavenly Tao. It was the most tyrannical. In the endless sea, Yu Chang, who was also an emperor, suffered a huge blow. His emperor body was almost destroyed. This was Jin Wuyang's emperor style. Even emperors of the same realm had to be extremely vigilant. The formless aura penetrated through all the emperor's fate energy and the emperor's heavenly Tao. Jian Wushuang and Jin Wuyang's expressions changed at the same time. Then they retreated 1,000 feet. If one looked closely, one could see cracks appearing on Jin Wuyang's emperor body and his emperor's radiance fading away. Emperor Jin Wu, who had occupied Jian Wushuang's immortal body, was even more severely injured. His entire immortal body was almost shattered. However, the mystic garb of the 9 heavens saved his life and prevented his immortal body from being destroyed. This move was too terrifying and illogical. It surpassed the meaning of any heavenly Tao or even the great Tao of Yen power. It did not use any medium and directly pressed onto Jian Wushuang's emperor body. You're bullying my emperor body? Don't you think I'll try for a perfect fusion? Jian Wushuang shouted angrily as his immortal body was being repaired. Jin Wuyang laughed coldly. So what if I bully you? Do you really think that you can defeat me just because you escaped from the endless sea? Jian Wushuang stopped talking and smiled darkly. His immortal body, which was wrapped in the golden emperor's radiance, suddenly shattered. Countless drops of divine blood dripped from the cracks, spilling into the void. Following this abnormal scene, the undying and imperishable immortal body was undergoing some strange changes. Tens of thousands of emperor patterns were growing, and they were extremely dazzling. You're trying to forcefully integrate the emperor body? Yu Chang's expression was solemn. Emperor Zhen Wu wants to transform Wushuang's immortal body into a full-fledged emperor body. What the hell? Is this guy courting death? Does he think that a mere immortal body can withstand the pressure of a full emperor body? Jin Wuyang frowned and said in a half-confused and half-angry voice. Yu Chang was silent. Then, he turned to look at him and said, "This immortal body is not ordinary. I investigated it when I was in the endless sea, but I couldn't see through it." Jin Wuyang continued to frown. "But this can't be compared to the emperor body, let alone perfect fusion. I'm afraid that it really can." Yu Chang's expression turned grave. As soon as he finished speaking, a gilded 1,000-patterned robe appeared. It was the 100 Leaves Battle Emperor robe. It materialized and landed on Jian Wushuang's immortal body. Jin Wuyang, who was about to retort, had a change in expression. "He's really condensed an emperor body?" "No, it hasn't completely condensed yet," Yu Chang said in a deep voice. "Once he transforms into a complete emperor body, I'm afraid there will be a huge change. Then what are we waiting for? Let's fight first." "Die!" Jin Wuyang shouted in a low voice. An emperor's sword suddenly condensed in his hand. He slashed down heavily with his sword. In an instant, the mountains and seas were destroyed, and the earth shattered. The Emperor Realm, Desolation, which had been silent for countless years, was shattered hundreds of millions of feet under this sword strike. Jian Wushuang, who was already wearing the gilded 100 Leaves Battle Emperor robe, was calm and composed. He even had a seductive smile on his face. Faced with this Emperor sword that could destroy the mountains and seas, he lowered his arms and a similar Emperor sword materialized before him. Rumble! The earth shattered, and Emperor's Realm, Desolation, fell into chaos. With his sword, none of the elders could get close at all. They looked at this scene in fear. The battle between the emperors was not something they could talk about. If they were not in Desolation, they would have run as far away as they could. Billions of miles of dust slowly dissipated, leaving behind a deep abyss. Jian Wushuang's figure was nowhere to be seen. Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang did not relax. They did not think that this sword strike could seriously injure Zhen Wu. In the next moment, a violent fluctuation suddenly appeared around them. An extremely dazzling figure broke through the void and descended. It was a sword, an Emperor's sword that was completely condensed from Emperor's radiance. Jian Wushuang wielded the Emperor's sword and slashed down fiercely. Yu Chang raised his head, and he tossed the dark green Emperor's sword into the air, intercepting Jian Wushuang's attack. It turned into a long rainbow as it flew. The two collided, and a shockwave was created. Endless power swept out. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and he barely managed to slash the rainbow apart with his sword, and then he stood in the void. Yu Chang, this matter has nothing to do with you. This is a matter between me and Zhen Wuyang. Emperor Zhen Wu, please stop. There is no end to this, Yu Chang slowly persuaded. If there's no end, then I'll fight until there is one today. Jian Wushuang shouted loudly, and the Emperor's sword in his hand exploded with power. If you refuse to come to your senses, then you will be buried here today, Zhen Wuyang said angrily. Then, he directly stepped on the air and flew forward. He was shining so bright that one could not look straight at him. At this moment, the white robe on his body disappeared. In its place was a gilded 100 Leaves Battle Emperor robe. With the Emperor robe, he returned to the ancient era. He returned to his peak, where even emperors fell under his sword. The power was brilliant, and boundless Emperor's fate energy was being rebuilt. The Emperor could not be stopped. Jian Wushuang's scarlet gold eyes flashed with solemnity and fear. The six-sun true Emperor's eyes opened at this moment. Zhen Wuyang stepped onto the air and slashed forward with the Emperor's sword in his hand without any hesitation. Jian Wushuang did not retreat. His eyes were cold as he slashed back at Zhen Wuyang with his Emperor's sword. The Emperor's sword met, and the Emperor's realm seemed to start wailing. In Desolation, the sky shattered and the earth cracked. Seeing this, Yu Chang hurriedly extended his hand to release the Emperor's fate energy to repair the shattered void and the ground. To emperors, destroying any heavenly region or secret realm was a simple matter. Not to mention, this was a battle between emperors. Just the fate energy that was emitted was enough to destroy everything. If Yu Chang did not stop it, the entire Desolation would shatter. An emperor fighting another emperor, and the emperor's radiance shone endlessly. Their eyes met. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with killing intent and hatred. On the other hand, Zhen Wuyang's eyes were indifferent, as if he was doing something that was only natural. Zhen Wuyang, you want me to die? How is that possible? I'm telling you, not only will I survive, but I will also live a good life. Just you watch. I will completely destroy your great sea region and bury you with it. I'll let you have a good taste of eternal exile. When an emperor was enraged, the mountains and seas would be destroyed. At that moment, the entire realm was on the verge of collapse, even with the blessing of Yu Chang's fate energy. The emperor's radiance was resplendent as the two emperor bodies collided fiercely. As the emperor's sword collided with each other, Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were sharp, and there was only endless killing intent left in his scarlet gold emperor eyes. As their eyes met, billions of wisps of emperor's fate energy bloomed from his back and attacked Zhen Wuyang. Wherever this fate energy passed, everything turned to dust, even the void. Each wisp of Emperor's fate energy was like a blooming chrysanthemum petal that completely enveloped Jin Wuyang before exploding. Boom! 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 Yu Chang's fate energy was scattered by this explosion, and all the elders who wanted to rush forward to help were sent flying. The entire Emperor's realm was in chaos, and everything was broken. Almost at the same time, Jian Wushuang retreated quickly and looked at the center of the explosion with his cold Emperor's eyes. This explosion surpassed the great Tao and the laws of Yen power. Only emperors could control and release it. The magnificent explosion engulfed desolation, which had been silent since its creation. Yu Chang's current mission was to do his best to protect the emperor's realm, desolation. Jian Wushuang stood in the void and looked coldly at Jin Wuyang, who was entangled in the explosion. He even had a slightly flirtatious look on his handsome face. He was confident that although Jin Wuyang would not die, he would definitely suffer unimaginable injuries. But the next moment, the result was completely different from what he had expected. A figure that suppressed the ancient heavenly Tao slowly stepped out from the broken and burning emperor's radiance. The explosion was so violent that even the emperor's fate energy was repelled. The fate energy automatically shrank back the moment it got close to him. Jian Wushuang's eyes widened and he subconsciously took a few steps back. Jin Wuyang was not injured at all. Only the robe on his body was slightly damaged. His gaze became even colder, as if he had returned to the peak of the ancient era. Facing Jian Wushuang, he raised his right hand and pointed. In an instant, Endless Emperor's heavenly Tao was condensed into this finger, and it advanced without any obstruction. He did not have time to think and immediately raised the Emperor's sword to block in front of him, hoping to block Jin Wuyang's attack. But the result was beyond his imagination. With a single finger, the Emperor's sword was instantly shattered. Jian Wushuang's chest caved in. At this moment, even the mystic garb of the 9 heavens dimmed. He was sent flying for 1,000,000 feet. At the same time, Jin Wuyang followed closely behind. He completely abandoned the Emperor's sword and smashed his fists heavily on Jian Wushuang's body. Bang! With a punch, the Emperor's heavenly Tao collapsed. He did not even have time to make a sound before he was blasted into the abyss. The ground shattered, and the entire desolation was in a terrible state. Furthermore, Jin Wuyang did not stop at all. He blasted the ground out of the abyss and continued to chase after him. In the next moment, billions of beams of Emperor's radiance burst out from the abyss, shattering desolation. Yu Chang's expression changed. Even his Emperor's fate energy was unable to stop it. The Emperor's realm was beginning to be destroyed by the Emperor's radiance. The plane shattered, and all the elders in the outer circle were shocked. However, they did not retreat. Instead, they released their own fate energy and heavenly Tao to repair desolation, which was on the verge of destruction. As the Emperor's radiance burst forth, the entire plane began to tremble and collapse. Then, a figure was blasted out from the depths of the earth abyss like a sun and a star. At this moment, the gilded 100 Leaves Battle Emperor robe was burning. Jin Wuyang stepped out of the abyss and punched Jian Wushuang's chest. His emperor body shattered. In an instant, millions of traces of Emperor's fate energy gushed out from his back like blooming immortal chrysanthemum petals. Emperor blood started to flow into the void. His eyes widened in disbelief. All of this happened too quickly, almost in an instant. He did not have any ability to retaliate. This was almost a one-sided slaughter. Jin Wuyang had broken through the defenses of his emperor body through sheer brute strength. Jian Wushuang covered his chest with his hands. What was strange was that although the 9 heavens raiment was extremely dim, it was not broken at all. Not a single wound was left behind. However, he was certain that the emperor body behind the mystic garb of the 9 heavens had indeed shattered. The emperor's fate energy was flowing and disappearing. Jin Wuyang stood in the broken void and did not make any further moves. Instead, he looked at Jian Wushuang calmly. The battle emperor robe on his body was also torn. It was obvious that he had experienced a bloody battle. After coughing out a wisp of emperor blood, Jian Wushuang's aura became weak and his pair of crimson gold emperor eyes became dim. Zhen Wuyang, oh Zhen Wuyang, you're still as vicious as ever. Not only are you ruthless to all living beings, but you're even more ruthless to yourself. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, I thought I was abominable. Now that I think about it, you are the abominable lord. Have you said enough? Zhen Wuyang's emotionless voice rang out as he raised his palm. In his palm, the endless emperor heavenly Tao was constructed, enough to destroy all enemies. How is this enough? I don't want to leave out any of your evil deeds. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked extremely evil. You're courting death. Zhen Wuyang's face frowned as he slammed down with the emperor's heavenly Tao. But then, everything changed. Jian Wushuang, whose aura was already weak, smiled wickedly. He shook his arms and shattered Zhen Wuyang's emperor heavenly Tao. You think that I'm no match for you and have lost, but you have to know that there are variables. Don't get so smug. Boom! The unparalleled fate energy of the emperor exploded, and it swept across the entire desolation like a tidal wave. This emperor's fate energy was the purest and most extreme fate energy. How is this possible? The emperor body has actually completely fused with this kid. Yu Chang could not remain calm anymore as he cried out involuntarily. His turbid eyes became clear. Zhen Wuyang's expression turned grave. He had never expected that Emperor Zhen Wu, who had almost died a moment ago, would recover completely in the next moment. He had even become even more terrifying. The shattered battle emperor robe turned into crimson ashes and lava, covering Jian Wushuang's emperor body once again. A fully fused emperor body. Feels really good. I haven't felt this for a long time. He slowly raised his arms and said in a somewhat absent-minded manner, Zhen Wuyang, I really have to thank you for letting me obtain a perfect emperor body. As my thanks, I will return everything that happened before to you. Die! He shouted loudly. Endless emperor's radiance swept out and crushed the Zhen Wuyang. At this moment, Yu Chang stopped watching. His emperor body instantly arrived beside Zhen Wuyang and resisted Zhen Wu's emperor's radiance together. It seems, I miscalculated this time. Zhen Wuyang sighed, his eyes dimmed. Yu Chang continued, this isn't your fault. No one would have thought that the true martial emperor would be able to fuse with the sovereign body. It's simply unbelievable. As they conversed, endless emperor's splendor finally descended and engulfed the sky. Jian Wushuang's emperor body was already complete. He didn't stop at all. He leaped in front of them and smashed down with his emperor fist. The void shattered, and the desolate emperor realm was in complete chaos. The might of the emperor's fist could even shake an emperor. Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang retreated 1,000,000 feet at the same time to resist this power. However, Jian Wushuang, whose body was covered in red lava, continued to turn his body and smash as if he didn't know fatigue. One punch, 1,000,000 shadows. Not only that, but he also released the Sixth Sun True Emperor's eyes. True Emperor Sixdas opened his eyes at the same time, and an unparalleled emperor will bloomed. It directly ignored the fate of any imperial lord and the heavenly Tao of any imperial lord as it descended. Yu Chang's expression changed, and his old face instantly turned red. In the final battle of the Endless Ocean, he had already been injured. At this moment, he was unable to withstand the Sixth Sun True Emperor's eyes. Zhen Wuyang sensed this change and immediately blocked Yu Chang behind him, using his martial emperor realm body to withstand all the attacks. Boom! 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 No Xianxia could see through the Sixth Sun True Emperor's eyes, not even imperial emperors. Since he couldn't see through it, he could only endure it completely. Even Zhen Wuyang, who had created this imperial style, could only endure it. This was the full-powered attack of Emperor True Martial after he had fused with his sovereign body. The Martial Emperor Realm robe on Zhen Wuyang's body shattered. His Martial Emperor Realm body could not withstand it and was on the verge of destruction. But immediately after, Yu Chang stretched out his hand and released his Imperial Lord Providence, blocking the huge attack. Yu Chang! Zhen Wuyang reached out to grab it, but he fell into the void because he had taken most of the attack. You want to leave? You can't even protect yourself. Jian Wushuang smiled ferociously. He suddenly lifted his palms and held Jin Wuyang in place, preventing him from moving. "Jin Wu, you're courting death," he shouted and broke through the obstruction without caring about anything else, crashing into Jian Wushuang. "So you still have this day." Jian Wushuang smiled coldly and threw a punch. The two fists met, and the emperor's power was emptied. They retreated thousands of feet at the same time, but Jin Wuyang was faster and crashed into Jian Wushuang again. The emperor's splendor condensed into a precious image, as if it had awakened from the ancient era, and it pressed down with a domineering aura. This was also a full-powered attack, a true rage of a god emperor. Jian Wushuang responded in time, but it was too late. The indescribable fate of the emperor made everything dim, devouring everything. Even the emperor body was rapidly being destroyed by this emperor lord treasure image. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's face was ferocious. He could feel that his luck was swallowed. "Zhenwu, I want you dead." The loud sound that contained the limitless heavenly Tao made the entire desolate emperor realm tremble and shatter even more. Jian Wushuang laughed crazily. "If I die, do you dare to let me die? As long as I die, you will be severely injured in an instant, and the emperor's way of heaven will also disappear. Let me ask you, do you dare?" Jin Wuyang didn't speak. He looked at Jian Wushuang, who was enveloped by the fate of the endless emperor, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Since that's the case, then you can die." He closed his fingers and clenched his fist. In that instant, the mountains and seas were destroyed, and the emperor's might shattered the sky. The entire desolate emperor realm was shattered into dust and turned into an ancient void. Almost at the same time, Little World Mountain, which was enveloped by auspicious clouds and rich in derivative energy, shook violently. The tremors lasted for a long time, waking all the elders from their slumber and looking at the boundless void. Chong Ling, who was sitting on the immortal tree, also sensed this change at the first possible moment. For the first time in countless years of peace and quiet, a violent wind suddenly blew on the Little World Mountain. The auspicious clouds in the sky turned dark red. Chong Ling's heart inexplicably throbbed, producing an extremely bad premonition. "Sister Ling, what are you looking at? How did Little World Mountain become like this?" Ami shook her hand as she raised her head and asked. Chong Ling came back to her senses and rubbed her little head. "It's nothing. Something should have happened, but it won't affect you." Ami nodded obediently and then asked, "Will that affect Brother Jian?" Chong Ling's heart trembled when she heard this. She then forced a smile and said, "Don't think too much. Your big brother Jian is very good. No one will hurt him." Ami nodded and stopped asking. However, the worry in her eyes grew more and more serious. She clearly remembered that Jian Wushuang had disappeared not long after he defeated Qingshan. Emperor Jin Wuyang, Uncle Yu, and the elders of Wanggu also disappeared. Now that such a commotion had occurred in Little World Mountain, it was probably related to their departure. Could it be that all these strange movements were caused by him? The desolate emperor realm was completely destroyed. The sky was shattered, and all that could be seen were floating rocks. With the help of the elders, Yu Chong looked up into the sky. There were two emperors there. One emperor stood, and the other emperor was also standing. However, he was already on the verge of collapse, as if he could fall asleep at any moment. The emperor blood that contained the shackles of fate energy seeped out of the emperor body and then scattered in the eternal void. His face was pale, but his eyes were still cold, unyielding, and filled with hatred. Jin Wuyang was standing in front of him, calm and collected. Then, Jin Wuyang raised his palm, which was filled with pure killing intent. Jian Wushuang's eyes widened. He was so terrified that he could not even speak. "Jin Wuyang, you dare to kill me?" "Why not?" he said. There was no reluctance in his voice, only coldness. Killing intent enveloped the area, and endless emperor radiance shone down. However, in the next moment, an old palm was placed on Jin Wuyang's raised arm. "Lord Emperor, you can't." It was Yu Chong. Jin Wuyang looked at him. "Why?" "Because this is unfair to little friend Wushuang," Yu Chong said slowly. Emperor Jinwu should bear the punishment and sin. You can't impose it on Wushuang, because he didn't do anything. If he's destroyed because of the sins of others, it's unfair to him. After hearing this, Zhen Wuyang glanced at Jian Wushuang and said, "But what about Jinwu? As long as he is not eliminated, the Great Sea region will be unstable." Yu Chang also fell silent because he did not know what to do. Emperor Jinwu's emperor body had completely fused with Jian Wushuang. Even Jian Wushuang's divine sense might have been devoured and absorbed. Jian Wushuang had almost become Emperor Jinwu. Even Yu Chang was not sure if Jian Wushuang was still alive. If there was really no way to expel Emperor Jinwu from Jian Wushuang's body, then the only outcome left was to kill him together. The result of being killed together was something that Yu Chang did not want to see. It was because he had a unique feeling about Jian Wushuang. It was a feeling of intimacy and some unknown factors. It would be the biggest mistake to kill him just like that. Seeing the two emperors in a stalemate, Jian Wushuang, who was on the verge of death, smiled secretly. He had never thought that the owner of the immortal body he occupied would actually be able to make Yu Changdu plead for mercy. If that was the case, Zhen Wuyang would probably not kill him. Just as he had thought, Zhen Wuyang fell silent and did not attack. This was because he was a part of Zhen Wuyang. Once he died, Zhen Wuyang would not have an easy time either. He might not even be an emperor anymore. Before he could smile, his expression suddenly changed. His emperor body actually accelerated and shattered. No, how was this possible? How can you still be alive? Jian Wushuang cried out, and his body was on the verge of collapse. Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang were puzzled at the same time. They did not know why Zhen Wu would lose his composure. However, following that, he seemed to be bleeding emperor blood and emperor's fate energy at an accelerated pace, and they did not know what was happening. Could it be that little friend Wushuang, whose immortal body was seized, didn't die? Yu Chang said in surprise. Zhen Wuyang could not believe it. Even if Jian Wushuang could defeat a 3 revolutions grand immortal, it was impossible for him to last so long and not die under the devouring of the emperor's fate energy. However, the changes in the emperor body made them believe that Jian Wushuang had not died. In the ethereal realm of divine sense, at this moment, Jian Wushuang stood in the sand and looked ahead with a pale face. In front of him was the furious Emperor Jinwu. "Give me back my immortal body and I'll let you go," Jian Wushuang said weakly. He had personally witnessed the battle between the emperors. Even though his divine sense was perfect, it was on the verge of collapse. The true martial emperor was exasperated. He had not expected Jian Wushuang to still be alive. You're courting death. Now that you're willing to fall into a deep sleep, I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll destroy your soul on the spot." Jian Wushuang sighed and said no more. In the next moment, a black feather that blotted out the sky appeared behind his back. As the black feather spread out, a chasing bird image form divine sense appeared. It was so large that it occupied almost half the ethereal space. It was covered in dark green wings and had 6 horns on its head. Each horn was a different color. It was beautiful and mysterious. Then it slowly opened its eye chakra. Its extremely pure golden eyes seemed to see through everything in the universe. It was a divine and primordial aura, and it came from the ancient era. It was unimaginable. With the appearance of the chasing bird and Jian Wushuang's transformation, Emperor Jinwu, who was originally flustered and exasperated, felt a deep chill in his heart. He never expected that there would be an emperor's aura in the depths of Jian Wushuang's divine sense. The emperor's fate energy was shattered, and his emperor blood gushed out. His emperor body was in a miserable state. In the eternal void, Jian Wushuang was struggling and his fate energy was rapidly declining. Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang looked at each other before attacking together. The emperor's fate energy transformed into chains that bound him completely. Immediately after, the ancient elders were also in position. They worked together to release their fate energy and rebuild the emperor's realm, Desolation. The void was mending, and the endless fragments gathered again. The fate energy of the nearly 50 ancient elders was too terrifying, enough to repair any realm. Desolation was completely restored in a few dozen breaths. Seeing this, Zhen Wuyang waved his hand and the ground rose, forming a majestic divine mountain. Then, the two emperors worked together and tied Jian Wushuang to the divine mountain. As the last trace of the emperor's fate energy dissipated, he stopped moving. Is Emperor Zhen Wu dead? Yuchang looked at Zhen Wuyang and asked. He nodded. No, but I can feel that he has fallen into a deep sleep. Yuchang said again. Then can you let little friend Wushuang leave? Zhen Wuyang frowned and shook his head. No, as long as Zhen Wu is not removed, I cannot do that. He will be sealed here until Zhen Wu is removed from his body. Yuchang was silent. He could not make a decision, but Zhen Wu Yang's decision was indeed the best solution. As long as the Zhen Wu was not stripped, it would be a disaster. Jian Wushuang naturally could not escape from the shackles. Zhen Wuyang still wanted to say something, but in the end, all he could do was sigh. In this battle between emperors, the final result was not as he wished. Emperor Zhen Wu fell into a deep sleep. His emperor body was already broken, but he could no longer be separated from Jian Wushuang's immortal body. They had completely fused. This was an ending without an ending, and it ended hastily. To Jian Wushuang, this was a complete disaster. He did not do anything and was sealed in desolation for countless years. The emperor finally left, and the emperor's realm fell into eternal silence. In the endless darkness, the figure that was chained to the peak of the divine mountain quietly opened his eyes. I'm now sealed indefinitely. Zhen Wu, you'll pay for this. Auspicious clouds returned, an immortal aura filled the air. Everything returned to peace. Hey! Did you see that the elders and the others all returned with injuries? Some of them were even heavily injured. What is this? I saw that even Uncle Yu was injured. What? Where did you see it? Don't spout nonsense. Why would I lie to you? I saw it with my own eyes. Although I only saw it from afar, it's definitely true. That's still not possible. Who could hurt Uncle Yu? I'm afraid that even all respective ancestors combined won't be enough to even scratch him. There's something fishy about this. The injuries of the ancestors are probably all due to that forbidden area. Forbidden land? Desolation? Forget it. We shouldn't talk about such a thing. The discussions erupted everywhere. Chong Ling, who was sitting under the immortal tree, quietly opened her eyes. Those who were discussing were the disciples of the various elders. They were the candidates for the heavenly official position of the seventh prince under Zhen Wuyang. At this moment, their discussion had a certain degree of credibility. The anomaly that happened in Little World Mountain was very likely related to that forbidden area. Chong Ling could not help but think of Jian Wushuang, who had defeated the Grand Yen Immortal single-handedly in the Dao arena. Did he leave or go somewhere else? Don't tell me that the anomaly of Little World Mountain has something to do with him? Her thoughts were swirling like a whirlpool, and she could not stop thinking about him. Chong Ling stood up and looked at the boundless void in front of her. He must have left. How could the changes in Little World Mountain be related to him? Thinking about it for a moment, Chong Ling once again returned to the immortal tree and sat down with her eyes closed. However, this meditation did not last long. Her slightly furrowed brows betrayed her current state of mind. No way. Could it be that the anomaly of Little World Mountain is really related to him? At this time, a crisp voice suddenly sounded out, and immediately following that, a small figure laid on Chong Ling's lap. What does it have to do with him, Sister Ling? It was Amy, and her delicate little face was looking at her curiously. Chong Ling came back to her senses and rubbed her little head. It's nothing. Did you see your big brother Jin? Amy said. Big brother sword? Didn't he leave with Grandpa? I saw it with my own eyes. Hearing up to here, Chong Ling's heart trembled, a bad premonition surging into her heart. She had already guessed that the change in Small World Mountain was related to Jian Wushuang. Sister Ling, what are you thinking about? Is there any news from brother Jin? Amy asked eagerly. Chong Ling smiled slightly. No, you don't have to worry. Cultivate well and don't slack off. Understand? Oh, Amy replied. then sat down at the side and focused on sitting up with her eyes closed. What's going on? Why am I so concerned about him? We've only met once. What am I thinking? She shook her head in a self-deprecating manner and sat down together. Auspicious clouds curled up. The entire little world mountain was peaceful, just like when it was created. There were fairies and heavenly officials candidates who were cultivating and meditating with the elders. It was a true immortal realm. However, in this peaceful and quiet immortal realm, there was a fairy who seemed extremely anxious. Her brows were occasionally relaxed and occasionally furrowed, as if she was thinking about something. Soon, she opened her eyes again and looked around quietly. Then, she lowered her voice and said, "Amy, do you want to see your big brother Jian?" In the midst of the wind and dust, a thin figure with 7-colored light was moving forward at a constant speed. It was a woman, Chongling. She left the small world mountain alone and walked toward desolation. She had never set foot in before. She did not know where desolation was. Besides the ancient elders, there were no other fairies or heavenly official candidates in the small world mountain. However, with Amy as a guide, she still knew the approximate location of desolation. Then, she quietly moved forward. Originally, Amy also strongly requested to go with them, but how could Chongling let her follow? She used a little trick to make her stay behind at Little World Mountain and went to Desolation alone. Emperor's Realm, Desolation. This was a place that no Yen immortal had ever set foot in. It was a secret realm. It was strange and mysterious. Everything was shrouded in a dark mist. Even a grand Yen immortal would feel a strong sense of unease when they stepped foot here. This place was extremely dangerous for Chongling, who had just stepped into the grand Yen immortal realm 50 million years ago. She focused her mind and covered her immortal body with a layer of Yen power before she heaved a sigh of relief. However, looking at the place filled with an ancient desolate aura, Chongling sighed again. What am I doing? I must be crazy. I actually came to such a strange place just to look for a Yen immortal. Forget it. For Amy's sake, I'll reluctantly go and look for him. In the ancient wilderness, there was only a slender figure moving forward slowly but firmly. As she moved forward, she did not notice that the black and gray mist around her was slowly gathering. Where can he be? Will it be more dangerous the further I go? Facing the clouds and mist that covered the sky, Chongling was somewhat worried. However, the next moment the crisis came much faster than she had expected. An unprecedented life and death crisis suddenly surged into her heart. She used almost all of her Yen power and her immortal body instantly rose into the air. Following closely behind was a huge claw that spanned about 100,000 miles. Boom! 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 The earth shattered, and natural chasm cracks instantly spread out for millions of miles. The dust billowed 10,000 feet. The huge claw was practically pressing down right behind her. Nearly missing her, Chongling was already so shocked that she could not speak as she stared at this scene in a daze. This giant claw was like a giant pillar that reached out from the clouds and easily split the earth. The entire claw was covered in a layer of thick and dense silver-gray scales. The 5 claws were enough to tear 5 celestial rivers. Chongling did not doubt in the slightest that if she did not dodge in time just now, she would have instantly died under this enormous claw swipe. Time seemed to have stopped. She was still standing in the void, not knowing whether to escape or not. At this moment, the clouds and smoke suddenly surged violently, and a huge beast head stretched out from within. It had bright amber vertical pupils that were like the spring water of the heavenly river, completely reflecting Chongling's slender figure within. This beast head looked like a dragon, but it was not a dragon. It looked like a beast, but it was not a beast. It was filled with a strange aura of chaos. Puny Yen Immortal, who allowed you to come here without permission? The loud voice was deep and suppressed the heavens and earth, making all living things tremble and bow. Chongling was startled and swallowed with difficulty. I just unintentionally barged into this place. I never thought that this place was a forbidden area. Heaven and earth were silent. The giant beast that was hidden in the clouds and smoke did not speak again. It looked at her with its eyes that were like the spring water of the heavenly river, as if it was trying to determine whether her words were true or false. After what seemed like an eternity, the beast spoke again. In that case, I'll pardon you. Leave this place immediately and don't enter again. When Chongling heard this, she lightly exhaled. Her hanging heart also finally relaxed. The giant beast did not intend to make things difficult for her. After warning her, it disappeared into the endless cloud of smoke. Looking at the ground that had been torn apart for nearly 1,000,000 miles, she still had a lingering fear. That kind of oppression was truly too terrifying, to the point that even a grand Yen Immortal was unable to resist. Everything returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. Retracting her thoughts, Chongling did not dare to stay any longer, urging her body to prepare to escape this place. However, after she turned around and took a few steps back, she stopped again, as if she was fighting something in her heart. Then, she secretly raised her head and pretended to casually check the situation around her. After seeing that there was nothing unusual, Chongling gritted her teeth and seemed to have made a decision. She suddenly turned back and prepared to enter the depths of desolation. However, as she turned around, another huge claw stretched out from the cloud of smoke and stood erect, blocking her path. I'll leave now. Chongling spoke with difficulty, muttering before fleeing from the plain, desolation. Almost at the same time, the figure tied to the top of the divine mountain in the depths of the desolation opened his eyes. He grunted and contemplated for a moment before falling silent again. After leaving desolation, she still had lingering fears. She did not even want to recall that kind of soul-stirring oppression. What kind of place is that? Why is there such a terrifying creature there? She was secretly shocked because she could feel the aura of the giant beast. It was not weaker than the Grand Elders from the ancient era in Little World Mountain. And at the last moment, she saw an unimaginable scene. The huge claw of the giant beast that hung down from the clouds was actually bound by tens of thousands of chains. Who has the strength to imprison it there? Could it be the Emperor? Thinking up to here, Chongling was shocked to the extreme. At the same time, she was even more certain that only a god monarch had such strength. Could he have been imprisoned there by the Emperor? She gritted her teeth. Clearly, she already had an answer in her heart, but this answer was too unfair. He was able to fight a grand Yen Immortal under Zhen Wuyang with the power of a Yen Immortal. Just because of that, should he be banished and imprisoned? The tallest trees in the forest would be the ones exposed to the strongest winds. Chongling understood this concept. However, it was also precisely because she knew that unwillingness arose in her heart again. However, there was nothing she could do about it. She could not do anything at all. She could even enter desolation. Thinking of this, she sighed and returned to Little World Mountain. Sister Ling, I actually fell asleep? In the Little World Mountain shrouded by auspicious clouds, under the immortal tree, Amy lowered her head and said. Her two hands were placed behind her back, looking like she had done something wrong. Chongling forced a smile and stretched out her slender palm to rub her head. It's all right, Amy. Don't blame yourself. That place was never a place you should have gone to. Amy nodded and then hurriedly said, Then, Sister Ling, did you see Big Brother Jian when you went there? She smiled bitterly. I didn't. Then, Chongling roughly told Amy about everything that happened there. Ah, no way. Is that place that scary? Amy exclaimed in surprise after hearing it. Chongling sighed slightly. It's far more terrifying than I described. Hence, it's almost impossible to see him. Then what should we do? Hopefully, nothing has happened to Big Brother Jian. Otherwise, young Emperor. At this point, Amy's face was filled with anxiety as she paused. Then, she suddenly raised her head and looked at Chongling with hope in her eyes. Yes, young Emperor, Brother Yen. Chongling was puzzled. What does it have to do with the young Emperor? As if grasping at a life-saving straw, Amy said, Sister Ling, you don't know this. Brother Jian and the young Emperor are best friends. If the young Emperor knows that Brother Jian is trapped in the secret realm of desolation, he will definitely come to help. After hearing this, Chong Ling was speechless. Even though she had been cultivating and meditating in Little World Mountain since she was young, she still knew some things about the heavenly regions outside. She was especially clear about the situation of the 7 princes, because this was the most basic criteria for a candidate to be a heavenly official. It was rumored that the eldest prince of Jinwuyang was the most violent and eccentric. He never befriended any Yen immortals and even treated his 6 brothers as enemies. A few years ago, Chong Ling had once looked at the eldest prince, Prince Yen, from afar. It was basically in line with the rumors. His face was pale, devilishly handsome, and eccentric and ruthless. They were hostile towards all the Yen immortals in the heavenly court. This also caused even the elders of the ancient era to avoid him and give him respect. There were even rumors that Prince Yen had fought alongside Jin Wuyang when he was still a minor. He had even used a scheme to help Jin Wuyang conquer the last heavenly court in the Great Sea region. All these amazing feats added together caused him to be infamous. In the entire Grand Sea region and even the heavenly court, no Yen immortal and Grand Yen immortals dared to underestimate this trashy prince. This was also the reason why she was surprised by what Amy said. In her opinion, it was impossible for the first prince, Prince Yen, to have anyone close to him, let alone a good friend. Moreover, seeing how Jian Wushuang was severely injured and brought to the small world mountain by Uncle Yu alone, she did not think that there was any relationship between the two. After thinking about it for a while, Chong Ling said, "Amy, you can't say things carelessly. How could they be related?" Seeing that Chong Ling did not believe her, Amy hurriedly said, "It's true. I won't lie to you, Sister Ling. Not long ago, Big Brother Jian came with Big Brother Yen to the Heavenly Court's banquet. They even got the Immortal Peach from that banquet together." Chong Ling's beautiful eyebrows trembled. She finally had an impression. The Immortal Peach winner from the last Heavenly Court banquet was indeed the first prince, Prince Yen. She also heard that Prince Yen split the Immortal Peach into 2 and gave the other half to a young immortal. Thinking of Jian Wushuang's shocking performance in Emperor Dao Arena, Chong Ling finally believed Amy's words. But would the first prince be willing to take the risk to save him? Chong Ling asked, her words filled with doubt. Amy smiled, her big eyes narrowing into the shape of a crescent moon. "Don't worry, Sister Ling. I can feel that Brother Yan's feelings for Brother Jian are different. He will definitely come and save Brother Jian." She hesitated for a while and finally made up her mind. "Then, shall we go see the young emperor?" Amy nodded desperately. "But the candidates for the heavenly official positions are not allowed to leave the small world mountain as they please. There's no such thing as a but, Sister Ling. I will have a way to let you leave this place." All right. The clouds and smoke swirled around, and then they returned. As if he was in a dreamlike cloud, a figure leaned on the jade steps. He was dressed in luxurious clothes with mountains and rivers painted on it, looking like a whale swallowing the sky. Leaning on the jade steps, he was half asleep and half awake, not knowing what the flow of heaven and earth was. In the heavenly palace, it was so quiet that one could hear it. There was not a single aura of a Yen immortal. After an unknown period of time, the tightly sealed heavenly palace's gates slowly opened. Then, a thin and small purple-robed man entered the palace with light footsteps. The thin purple-robed man quietly came to the side of the prince. He bent over and whispered, "Your Highness, there is a fairy who came to see you 6 days ago. She said that she has something important to discuss with your Highness." The figure on the jade steps did not even open his eyes, as if he was still sleeping. Meanwhile, the thin purple-robed man stood still and waited for a reply. After a long time, a cold voice sounded. "No. If she doesn't leave, kill her." The thin and small man in purple nodded. He would carry out every order firmly and never asked for an explanation. He turned around and was about to leave, but after taking a few steps, he stopped and turned around to add another sentence. "Your Highness, that fairy is a Grand Yen immortal. I can sense from her aura that she probably came from Little World Mountain. Not interested. Ask her to leave." The figure on the jade steps said. There was only cold killing intent in his words. The thin and small purple robe was silent. Finally, he said, Your Highness, it was little Amy who asked her to come and see you. On the jade steps, he quietly opened his eyes, which contained supreme might. Immortal clouds surged, and the heaven palace was solemn and grand. This was the first time Chongling had truly left Little World Mountain. She was extremely nervous, but at the same time, she was filled with intense curiosity about everything. Especially when she arrived at the Six Heavens realm where the first prince was, her curiosity reached its peak because she smelled the scent of destruction in the void. Although the smell of destruction had almost disappeared, she could still sense it. She was very curious about what the Six Heavens realm had experienced before that it was filled with the aura of destruction. Standing in great lonely heaven and looking at the heavenly palace that was still tightly shut, Chongling was already somewhat angry. After all, she was a Grand Yen Immortal, a first-class existence in the entire Grand Sea region. She had never thought that she would be left outside waiting at the door during their first meeting. Although the person she was meeting was the son of the Emperor, it still made her angry. Just as she was considering whether she should turn around and leave, the heavenly palace's gate opened. The thin purple-robed man flew in front of her and was responsible for receiving her. Suppressing the unhappiness in her heart, Chongling entered the heavenly hall. Clouds and smoke curled up, and a slightly sweet and fishy fragrance wafted in the hall. The first time one smelled it, it made one feel uncomfortable, but one would unknowingly be immersed in it. Chongling's nose twitched slightly, clearly feeling discomfort towards this kind of strange fragrance in the hall. After the thin purple-robed man led her into the hall, he quickly left and closed the door. Her heart trembled, and a sense of danger welled up in her heart. Thinking of the unreasonable and ruthless young emperor, she became nervous. Even though she was a Grand Yen Immortal, she had the urge to escape at any moment. Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, a cold voice sounded. "What are you doing in Six Heavens?" Accompanied by this voice, a figure dressed in luxurious clothes slowly walked out from the depths of the hall. Chongling held her breath and became even more nervous. Even after several years, she could still recognize the first prince, Prince Yen. The young emperor frowned slightly. Clearly, his patience was gradually running out. "Tell me, you waited 6 days to see me. What do you want?" After regaining her senses, Chongling said nervously, "Your Highness, I want to ask you to save a Yen Immortal." When he heard this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and sneered. "Do we know each other? Don't you think it's a little ridiculous to make such silly requests?" Chongling also felt that the way she asked was a little wrong. But she still said, "Although it's a little absurd, I believe that he's still somewhat important to you, so please help him." The young emperor was already losing interest. He immediately turned around and waved his hand. "Not interested. You can leave now. Don't let me see you again." Chongling was startled. She had never thought that he would be so cold and straightforward. Immediately, the suppressed resentment and unhappiness in her heart. She could not hide the anger in her voice as she said, "If I had known that you were so heartless, I wouldn't have come here to see you even if I had to die. In that case, let him die in desolation." After saying that, she prepared to leave without looking back. At this moment, the young emperor's voice sounded again. "What's his name?" Even though Chongling was resentful, she still spoke. "I only know that his name has the word Jian in it. Amy calls him Big Brother Jian." On the jade steps, the luxuriously dressed figure suddenly trembled. After which, he immediately leaped down the jade steps and arrived in front of Chongling. Then, he reached out his hands and held her arms tightly. He almost lost his composure and said, "Jian, is his name Jian Wushuang? Answer me." Chongling, who was shocked by the sudden change, momentarily forgot how to speak. I think that's his name, yes." After getting the answer, the young emperor's eyes trembled. After he released his hand, he sat down on the jade steps as if he had been drained of all his strength. Looking at the huge change in demeanor, Chongling was shocked. At the same time, the anxiety in her heart was finally settled. She asked, "Are you going to save her or not?" The dejected young emperor slowly raised his head and looked at her. "You came from Little World Mountain? Tell me everything about him. Don't hide anything. Chongling nodded and told him everything that had happened since the first time she met Jian Wushuang. That's all I know. After that, I tried to enter Desolationo to find him, but I failed. That's why I came to you. She took a deep breath and said. Then, she looked at the young emperor sincerely. Please save him. The young emperor's back was facing her, and he was motionless like a statue. After a long time, he slowly turned around. A complicated and scrutinizing look flashed in his eyes. What's your relationship with him? Chongling was startled, clearly not realizing that his line of questioning would actually be so strange. We've only met by chance. We've only met once. We can only be considered ordinary friends. Ordinary friends? The young emperor smiled faintly. Would an ordinary friend be willing to put herself in danger? Why would you secretly leave Little World Mountain to ask for the help of a Yen immortal that you've only met once? Chongling was speechless, not knowing how to answer for a moment. The young emperor smiled faintly as he stepped forward. Chongling continuously retreated, incomparably nervous. He slowly bent over, and his eyes revealed a seductive charm. Since you're from Little World Mountain and a Grand Yen Immortal, you must be a candidate for the heavenly official position of the Emperor's sons. Right? What do you want to do? Unknowingly, Chongling was pressed against the stone pillar. Me? Of course, I want many things. The young emperor smiled wickedly. I already have someone in mind for the position of great heavenly official, and it will never change. However, you are to my liking, and I don't want to give up. So I want to ask you, are you willing to be the Empress? My Imperial Empress. The divine sense in her mind seemed to have exploded with 10,000 tons of lightning. At this moment, Chongling's mind was completely blank. She had never thought that the young emperor would say such words to her on their first meeting. Ridiculous. This was simply too absurd. While she was still in shock, the young emperor reached out his palm and lifted her beautiful jaw. Chongling instantly became clear-headed, and her face also turned cold. Facing the young emperor who was taking advantage of her, she directly stretched out her hand and slapped him. However, before the slap landed, the young emperor raised his hand to stop it. Don't let your palm strike a prince. The consequences are far beyond what you can bear. Chongling hesitated. Ever since she had gained sentience, she had been cultivating and meditating in Little World Mountain. Everything she had was given to her by the emperor. Naturally, the orders coming from the emperor and his sons could not be disobeyed. And now, as the crown prince, Prince Yen could do anything he wanted to her. She did not dare to disobey. Even if she was a Grand Yen Immortal, she did not dare to disobey. Looking at Chongling, who chose to endure it silently, the young emperor raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then, without any warning, he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Chongling's pupils instantly dilated, and the corners of her ears were red as if they were about to drip blood. That was because he was overly nervous. The black hair merged together, covering everything that had happened. Chongling's clear divine sense collapsed in an instant. This kind of impact was truly too great to her, causing her mind's divine sense to go blank. His attitude was borderline rude and unexpected, breaking all her defenses, including her sense of shame. That feeling was passionate and terrifying, but he did not know how to resist it. At this moment, the door of the heavenly palace opened. The thin purple-robed man stretched out his body to check the situation in the palace. When he saw the intimate scene, he consciously retracted his body and closed the door. Chongling finally regained her senses. A great sense of humiliation and hatred flashed across her eyes. Then, she used her pearly white teeth and bit down forcefully like a little beast. Dark red divine blood flowed down her mouth, and a line of blood flowed down her beautiful jaw. The young emperor opened his eyes, exuding a supreme cold aura. Chongling retreated, her back against the stone pillar. She looked at him with a humiliated gaze, without any worry or fear. The wound on the young emperor's thin lips also healed in an instant. It was as if nothing had happened, and his gaze returned to its cold, distant look. After tidying up his messy clothes, the young emperor said calmly. Just pretend that nothing happened. If word gets out, I'll take your life. Ling's body trembled, and the humiliation in her eyes was completely replaced by anger. She sneered, and she did not even bother to wipe the divine blood from the corner of her mouth. You were the one who took advantage of me first, but you're using this to threaten me? Even if you're the first prince, I don't believe that the emperor would be so biased. When the young emperor heard this, he smiled. It won't do you any good to spread the word. It's fine as long as you and I know about it. If you want to be my empress, that's another matter. Dream on. Even if I die, I will never be your empress, Ling angrily said. He seemed to be uninterested in this and turned around to walk into the depths of the heavenly palace. Are you going to save him or not? Ling gritted her teeth and said anxiously. I'll save him. You don't have to meddle in the matters between us. After he finished speaking, his figure disappeared into the depths of the hall. Ling stomped her feet in anger, wishing she could eat him alive. Damn it! Not only is he frivolous and lecherous, but he's also so perverse and violent. Whoever becomes his heavenly official in the future will definitely not have a good ending. The heavenly palace's gates opened again. She did not want to stay any longer. She left the heavenly palace and waited in great lonely heaven. Your Highness, you shouldn't have treated the heavenly official candidate like that. If she returned to Little World Mountain and spoke a few more words to the emperor, I'm afraid. The thin purple-robed man did not continue. The young emperor said, Don't worry, she won't say a word. I did that to her because, well, there's a reason. Also, Wuxia came out of the endless sea alive, but he should be imprisoned desolation by the imperial father. The originally extremely calm, skinny, purple-robed man's body suddenly trembled when he heard this. His turbid eyes were filled with disbelief. Lord Jian. He actually returned alive from the endless sea. Don't tell anyone about this, especially those from Little Lonely Heaven. Don't let them know. The thin and small violet-robed man nodded in agreement and retreated out of the heavenly hall. This time, he did not let Ling wait outside for too long before the young emperor walked out of the heavenly hall. What surprised her was that this time, he did not wear luxurious clothes that depicted mountains and rivers. Instead, he changed into a plain and casual outfit. Moreover, his long hair was no longer draped over his shoulders. Instead, his hair was casually tied behind him with a golden string, giving off an indescribable warmth. Let's go. You're in charge of leading the way. The young emperor placed his hands behind his back, and his voice was cold and distant. Also, don't look at me like that. It's an insult to the emperor. Ling grit her teeth so hard that her silver teeth were about to shatter. She practically used all her strength to fiercely glare at him before she angrily charged out of great lonely heaven. The two figures were like two streams of starlight, quickly disappearing into the depths of the void. Are you sure that Wuxia is imprisoned in desolation? I'm not too sure, but there's a high possibility. I can't go in and check. It's too dangerous. On the way, the young emperor frowned. He had only heard of desolation, but he was sure that it was the Zhen Wuyang's emperor's realm. It was extremely mysterious. Furthermore, the number of Yen immortals who knew about that place was extremely few. If Jian Wuxia really walked out of the endless sea and was detected by Zhen Wuyang, it was very likely that he was imprisoned in desolation. Desolation was mysterious. No Yen immortal knew what was hidden there. It was a place of great mystery. However, even so, the young emperor still planned to venture into desolation alone. Desolation was an unnamed world. It was impossible to find the entrance from the outside world. One could only enter from Little World Mountain. As for Little World Mountain, it was where Zhen Wuyang and the group of elders lived. Outsiders would probably be discovered as soon as they stepped into the place. However, the young emperor did not care about this. He did not even bother to conceal his aura as he entered Little World Mountain. Hey, restrain yourself. We're going to save him. If we're discovered before we even enter, won't it be a waste of our efforts? Ling's heart was broken as she persuaded him nicely. The young emperor glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and continued walking forward. Chongling gritted her teeth, but she had no choice but to quickly head to Desolation. This is Desolation? He was a little surprised. Although he had heard of it, he still had a vague idea of where Desolation really was. Chongling nodded and did not say much. She entered first without any hesitation. Upon seeing this scene, a complicated look flashed across the depths of the young emperor's eyes. After a moment of silence, he stepped in as well. The desolate silence was the unchanging main color of Desolation. Even time would become meaningless here. The mist mixed with gray and black threads almost covered the entire world. The visibility was less than 1,000 miles. In this place, desolation and deathly stillness accompanied each other. Pay attention. There is a huge beast in the clouds. Even I am no match for it. Looking around, Chongling reminded in a low voice, not even daring to breathe loudly. The young emperor glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. Since you're no match for the beast, why did you come here to die? For a moment, she was speechless. For some reason, she felt that his comment made sense. A moment later, she came to her senses and said angrily, "None of your business. I don't believe you can defeat it." He did not argue and walked forward alone. His eyes turned sharp in an instant. When he had entered this place, he had sensed a powerful aura that was faintly discernible but could not be ignored. This aura was beyond imagination. It was not something a Immortal could contend against. However, he continued to move forward resolutely.